police station, where they were later directed to the mortuary. According to reports, on the day in question, the deceased was escorted by her boyfriend Joseph Ngige to a roundabout bordering her workplace, where he bid her farewell, expecting to see her back home in the evening. Ngige and Wambui, who are both from Nakuru, lived together in a single-room house in Ruiru. Ngige has since expressed shock as to why his girlfriend would be murdered in such a bizarre manner. Detectives are of the opinion that Wambui was likely raped and killed by her murderers at a different location before her body was dumped. And a Garissa court has sentenced 2 men to life in prison for the crime of robbery with violence that led to the death of another man. The accused Daniel Makau Muloza and Alexander Vundi Musyoka were sentenced by Garissa Chief Magistrate Cosmas Maundu, who delivered the sentence. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have...
SpiceFM, Nyeri.
Friday morning, and what do we see? The heavens have opened up and the roads have not closed just yet. So you can get around where you're going without too much of a hiccup, at least for now. Certain parts of the city that are already looking a little bit crazy. Jogo Road, as usual, that has really started early this morning, going towards the roundabout at the city stadium, and then onto Landis Road, out into the city via the Kamkunji roundabout. That's where you'll see the most action right now. We're also seeing a build-up on the Thika Superhighway. But again, nothing too crazy. We're looking at Westlands, and that's building up on Wayaki Way. Red Hill Link Road, that's what's going to get you out of it. Think about that as an option. Mombasa Road, that started early as well. A lot of folks going towards the airport today. Is there something we do not know? We'll wait and see. Around Imara Daima, that's where we see that stretch that's building up as well. Not too bad for now. Let's look at it about 6:30. Have you left? It would be a good time to do so you don't get stuck. All the while, talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Friday.
The only way to...
It is. It's the 21st day of January 2021. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, on this lovely day. 9 minutes after 6.
It's
Ndu?
actually 2022.
What did I say?
21.
We can even make it 23 then.
Okay.
Just for good measure. Let's go ahead of time.
Whatever rocks your boat.
Yes, it's Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, C.T. Muga, and we have a guest host, Wanjiru Gikonyo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Thank you and Happy New Year.
How uliruka vizuri?
Kabisa.
That's a question you have to ask.
Kabisa. With the travails that were pertaining to the country. Yes. Yes, and I won't even mention which. Suffice to say, yes, tuliruka salama na tunashukuru.
That's very good. Ndu,
Yes,
how was your day?
fine, thank you. Yeah.
Good to
How
see
are you?
I'm very well.
Good to see you, man.
Yes, good to see me.
Good to see you. Good.
City,
Yes.
ujambo?
Sijambo kaka.
Safi.
Hofu kwako.
You're still enjoying the nini?
The
The cold weather?
Bro. It's like this, huh? It's something I enjoy at my own peril. I actually like the cold weather. My body doesn't. Yes.
That's the problem.
That, my prime, is a problem. Yes.
But
Interesting.
your soul connects with the weather.
So interesting that you can like the weather, but your body doesn't.
My body doesn't. I actually like cold, but my body doesn't.
So your mind appreciates
Everything about it, yes. And every once in a while, I think I'm going to enjoy the cold weather and say I drive and I roll down the window. The following morning, I can barely speak.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Paul.
So, and the neck is stuck in one position. So if I want to move, I have to move the entire body. So when I talk to you, I sort of like do this. So that one, since I understand that is what I will go through, I do not bother.
Okay.
Yes.
Usijali.
I allow the enjoyment to be academic.
Very good. Welcome to the conversation. We'll have several conversations today. In addition to looking at the headlines that are in the papers, we will also talk about the budget ceiling. And this is accountability gaps in the budget ceiling. This is a conversation that we'll have at 8 o'clock, at 7 o'clock. At 8, we'll have a conversation, as we teased yesterday, about military officers who have joined the government in various positions. Yesterday, we hosted one, the director of the Asset Recovery Agency. We know there is Lieutenant General Badi, who is director of NMS. We know the head of the Kenya Meat Commission now, and several others, both serving and retired military officers. So there's been all this talk of what does it mean. So let's also ask ourselves, what does it mean? We'll have that conversation at 8. Let's begin by taking a look at COVID numbers.
343 million is now what the global count is. Numbers keep rising, significantly so. Again, we're looking at most of the numbers coming out of particular countries, and so many conversations being had at the same time. Is it too soon to lift the Omicron restrictions when the World Health Organization is warning that COVID is not over amid European case records? So let's look at what's happening there just really quickly. The head of the World Health Organization has issued a warning to world leaders that the coronavirus pandemic is nowhere near over. Dr. Ghebreyesus cautioned against the assumption that the newly dominant Omicron virus is significantly mild and has eliminated the threat posed by the virus, because those are the conversations that are being had in certain circles. That you're looking at a weaker variant, so that means that the severity of COVID is dwindling. That is not the case, he said. And he said, we're still not out of the woods, and don't think that because you're seeing a variant that may be weaker in terms of symptoms, that doesn't mean that we're getting better.
What specifically is he referring to? Is he talking about any specific measures? So we know governments are taking several measures. The UK has said, all right, so we will remove the mandate to wear masks in public and such. Other governments are doing. Is that what he's referring to, or is he just being general?
He's being, in this case, he's being general, because there are conversations, and quite heavy ones, where experts in certain fields are saying, well, what it could mean is that as corona does the rounds, and we're seeing this new variant, which is not as severe as previous ones, that perhaps it is now losing its strength, its potency. And what he's coming out to say is that that is not the case, number one. Number two, we're still here for some time. And we're probably going to have to see it as something that we live with. We're looking at nearly 500,000 new cases on Tuesday in France, record numbers of cases in other countries such as Germany, 100,000 new infections in Germany. He was speaking at a news conference which he called in Geneva, and he said that, look, we're looking at 18 million new cases in 1 week. And the narrative is that the mild disease is misleading. It doesn't mean that it's over.
Those who are saying it's mild, what's their argument?
They're saying that we've seen a variant which is mild. it's affecting many more people still. It's not as severe as it was. So that even if another variant then enters into the scene, we're probably going to see even an even milder one. And he's saying this is not the case. Just because this variant has come, it's affecting many people. We didn't see as many deaths. It's not as severe in terms of symptoms. Does not mean that the situation is getting better.
And the discussion on herd immunity, somehow that one went to the waters, did it? You know, WHO are expected to comment on such matters, and we expect them to give some lead and some guide. The truth of the matter is this. A lot of progress has been made with regards to understanding COVID, to understanding the virus. But there's a great deal more we really have no clue about. When you talk about severity and when you talk about infections, now you're discussing epidemiology. Now, what you say and what the general public will listen to understand, two completely different things. In Kenya, we said we are lifting the curfew. From what I have observed, people understood that COVID had ended.
But even now, don't you hear people talk about when there was COVID?
Yes.
Yeah.
During COVID times.
During COVID times, this is what it was.
Because the few times I have made a foray into a public place, I am shocked. People aren't wearing masks at all.
Yeah, but first question, you're making a foray into a public place. What type of public place? City tunakuona?
Yes, a cultural establishment.
Yes. The South African scientists are part of this conversation, and they made an announcement yesterday, monitoring the news, where they were saying that the Omicron virus actually is, did they use the word disappearing? It's fading out. So that means this wave is actually diminishing. And they made a very conservative statement, but conservatively hopeful that this may indicate the weakening of the severity of the level of infection. I think what the WHO is doing is they're messaging the public, telling them, stay on your guard.
Yeah.
Is it going to work? I think actions speak louder than words. In Kenya, the reason people just went, I think the temple was set on. When you live fast, you're holding rallies.
You have curfew.
You
have restrictions and you're holding rallies.
Actions louder than words.
You have prevented people from crossing borders, essentially confined them within the areas where they stay. What do the leaders do? They crisscross the whole country.
Let's take a break. 18 after 6, a very good morning to you. We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM TV on YouTube and Facebook. Say hello if you're online. We'll be saying hello to you shortly after we take a look at the forecast. And thereafter, we'll get today's problem. And we'll have the news of the headlines.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person. Hustler is a person who is making his a living through hard work.
The group of leaders we are having now, Kenyans, listen, the chemical composition is the same. You will mold them to ODM, then NASA, you mold them to Kanu, mold them to Jubilee, mold them to any other different color sometimes, but the chemical composition is the same.
It's not about me as Nurdin Haji, but it's about the constitution that I swore to protect. So when individuals attempt to hoard those powers and they want to be investigators and also prosecutors, then of course I have to defend that position because that position is in the constitution and that's what Kenyans wanted.
I'll tell you what happens is that when you ignore court orders, you're creating and quoting anarchy. Then you create a very dangerous precedent.
A story is told of the first president of the country who also went to visit Mathare, presidential tour. Yeah? And of course, he went to this place and he introduced himself. So one of the enemies says, hata wewe kuna jina kama yangu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Cloudy conditions, rain in most parts of Nairobi today.
The weather with
Spice
SpiceFM.
Lows of 15. It's cloudy in Nakuru at 13, highs of 24, and lows of 13. We see 12 as the low in Nyeri, where it's partly cloudy at 13 rather, and we'll go to highs of 25. Partly clear conditions in Eldoret. Getting to a cloudy state, 8 highs of 23, and lows of 11. We'll see the sun come up in Mombasa at 26, highs of 32 today, and we'll see highs of 31 in Malindi. It's cloudy this morning at 27. Kisumu is mostly cloudy at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 18. And we're looking at cloudy conditions in Kakamega at 14 currently, going to highs of 28 and lows of 14. Out in Kampala, it's clear for now at 16, highs of 28 and lows of 16. Raining in Dar es Salaam this morning at 24. That'll be today's low, going to highs of 31. It's a foggy morning in Lagos at 24, highs of 33 and lows of 22 today. And clear skies at 13 in Johannesburg, highs of 25 and lows of 12. It's raining in Kinshasa this morning. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 23. Out in Beijing, early afternoon Friday reads -3 and cloudy. It'll just come to a high of -1 and lows of -4. Cloudy conditions in Paris at 2, highs of 6 and lows of 0. It's clear in London at 2. It'll go to highs of 7 and lows of 2. And still Thursday night, -3 in New York. We'll see highs of 2 and a bitter low of -10.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
Edward Washira is listening from University Way, and I'd be very interesting to know in that how far you've gone in terms of your collections for your would-be aspirant, Eric Latiff.
I told you, I'm starting to think that Edwin Washira is actually an agent of my enemies.
He's playing for the other team.
Political detractor.
Mm.
Told me to wait. He'll tell me when. Then when he comes to tell me it's when, it'll be too late.
Indeed. Chris Giamolo says, good morning. He's tuning from Kisumu this morning. Happy to be here. Thanks for joining us. Okay. Jeffrey Muchama says, good morning from Kisumu. Awar Ofeni is also in Kisumu. Somebody else from Kisumu, Thor Onyulo Weche, says, good morning.
Go on.
Did I say something wrong?
Nope.
Okay. George Mashuke is tuning from Kasarani this morning. Gordon Mugisha, all the way from Kampala in Uganda, watching and listening. Asante Sana. John Rory is tuning from Mombasa. And Odero Jr. tuned in. Happy New Year, Wanjiru, he says. Sarah Mukua tuning from Nairobi this morning. And from Mombasa, we see you. South Sudan, Muto Lo Hanya Hillary tuning from Juba. And in from Mogadishu, that's where Namswe Elisha is. Tasia tuned in, waiting for the earthquake. All right. Antoa Viaka is tuning from Doha this morning. Koru in Kisumu, that's where Brian Arman is. Pitar has a proverb from Twapa, and he says, a happy man marries the girl he loves, but a happier man loves the girl he marries. Apo. Daniel Kitiku, good morning. Tune in from Bere, North Embu County. Thanks for joining us. We see you all. Can't get to all of you, but thanks for joining us.
Everybody welcome. City, the proverb.
Yes, indeed. Shimo la ulimi, mkono haifutiki. Shimo la ulimi, mkono. Okay. Shimo la ulimi, koma, mkono, koma, haufutiki.
Shimo la ulimi, mkono, haufutiki.
Yes, I put the comma there so that you can see the pause.
That
How
one.
those two related?
No.
Ulimi.
What sort of hole
Shimo, ulimi.
Yes.
What hole would a tongue dig? Tongue. Digging a hole. And I'm saying you can't cover it with your hand. The hand can't cover it. Essentially, you're saying there are things that are once said, you can't really take them back.
Okay.
Yes, and if what is said is incendiary, you cannot take it back. You can try, you can apologize, you can twist it, you can spin it. You actually can't take it back, because the more you talk about it, the more you actually transfer and the more you highlight it. It doesn't matter which form. Oh, I didn't actually mean this. You're still talking about the same thing. Oh, what I meant was this. You're still talking about the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Your interpretation makes sense. I'm not sure it's an interpretation of that exact proverb, but... wow. I'm not going to argue. Mwalimu, I'm not arguing. If you say it is, I have accepted.
Actually, I would rather you gave me an alternative. You know why? It's that
She first doesn't think that's a proverb. Think let's start from there.
No, that interpretation is great, but of which proverb? Because
you see,
mkono haufuti mawazo. Whatever you say is not wiped by the hand. So maybe I'm being too literal. That's what I'm
kufuta
saying.
is to wipe, you know that. Sasa mkono hawezi kufuta.
Yes.
Shimo ambayo nini?
Yes.
Imepangwa na nini na ulimi. So, you see,
so you dug yourself into a
hole with your tongue, and your hand cannot now erase it.
So let me take back my reservations.
Actually,
no.
I was actually hoping you would add something to it. You see, the joy of these proverbs that appear vague and are often sometimes genuinely vague is that when they are questioned, then you do the deed. The proverb now becomes a subject of discussion, which is what it's intended to be.
So when you dig yourself into a hole, you're in that
When you use your tongue to dig yourself into a hole.
You will not use your hand to cover it.
No, hand won't cover it. Sorry.
Let's look at the headlines then in the papers. Remember, you can access the Standard e-paper at www.standardmedia.co.ke. 20 shillings only. The hard copy is 60 bob. The online digital copy is 20 bob. And you get access to the Standard Media archives. You also get access to free Sudoku and free crossword puzzles on a daily basis. In the headlines, freeze political greed, Supreme Court judges told. I'm starting with that because one of the parties involved in the Supreme Court case is here with us in the studio.
Yes.
Wanjiru.
Yes.
BBI's final test, that's a headline in The Nation. The judges of the Supreme Court retreated to decide the fate of the BBI. The two rival sides in the contest are hoping their wishes will carry the day. So will the highest court revive the push to change the constitution, or is it going to bury it altogether?
Of course, you know what side I hope they argue on. I'm very proud to be associated with this case, very proud of our legal team who have given scintillating and very enlightening arguments. They brought us back, really, the BBI is a fight for the soul of this country. We are fighting the monarchy and the oligarchy that the political powers sought to create, and we are reminding them this is a democracy. In fact, the term I liked is just reiterating again that the president serves based on delegated power from the primary constituents. So it's a delegation of our primary constituent power. So just reminding the president, you work for us, and you're not going to flip that around. So separation of powers, the political arm, the judicial arm, the executive arm should be separate. And there have been violations. And I think we'll be discussing part of that today. So it's really saying, it's about rule of law. Are we going...
Principally, Wanjiru, what principally are you against? Is it the process of amending the Constitution? Is it the how it started? Is it the concept of amending the Constitution?
Or the individuals involved in that process?
Yes.
Not the individuals, not the process, not the thought of amending, because Constitution is a living document. And it needs to be amended if it's not fitting. But the process matters and the origination matters. Because here we are saying, and it's a really strong shot in the arm for citizens, that the power is vested in us, that we are the ones who enacted this Constitution. We are the only ones who can decide to amend, especially those protected clauses. Yes, so that it's putting on us a responsibility to defend, uphold, and to be active citizens. So there's a disconnect. We are not those active citizens. We wait for our political leaders, but hopefully this process is educating us and will create a new culture of more people being more engaged. Even the conversation is great.
That conversation makes sense, but when you bring in the argument of oligarchies and dynasties, you see, you have now entered the realm of a class clash. One could even argue, no, let me be specific, I could argue that you are actually propagating a class war.
Well, when you talk about imperial domination, when you talk about top-down authoritarian style of governance, yes, that is perpetrated through monarchical structures, whereby you have political leadership that imagines it's above the law and everyone else is subject to the law. And so when I use the term monarchy, when I use the term oligarchy, it's because the BBI envisaged a country where you would negotiate, the political leaders would negotiate and agree who will govern us. And we're saying, hold on a minute, we are a democracy. We will decide. And in fact, the tragedy of the BBI is that this government failed to implement the constitution, failed to strengthen devolution by giving it the 40% that it needs of resources, failed to implement Chapter 6 so that these corrupt leaders cannot be on the ballot box to undermine our governance system. So we are the problems the BBI purports to correct are the failures of this administration to implement the constitution as required.
Did you say we're going to discuss this later on?
No.
Then I will hold my horses.
So let's take a break then. And that's the first story of the papers. It's 28 minutes to 7. Time for us to take a look at what's happening on the roads. Good morning.
Bro, na si watu wamejenga manyumba area. Kwanza angalia ile. Are you seeing that roof? That color? Sio ni nyumba mpya?
That's not a new house, bro. That's a Covermax roof.
Covermax?
Covermax. It's more than just a roof. It's color that lasts. Ukiweka, umeweka.
So whose new house is that anyway? Really nice.
Ni yangu.
How's that possible?
Good choice from me. Covermax didn't let me down. It's good to have a long-lasting roof when you have a family, you know? Covermax roofing sheets with advanced color coating technology. A quality product from Mabati Rolling Mills.
What makes a man?
I had an advertising job that was toxic. It was difficult. I'm not saying the people were toxic. I don't think anyone is inherently toxic.
Don't ever let someone's perception of you become your reality.
How do we navigate through career, family, and life?
I was an average kid. I wasn't a poor student.
Examining what defines a man.
We derive our identity as men based on external factors, on things that people can be able to see.
A space for men to open their experiences and more. Starting Thursday, 18th November on the Standard Digital YouTube and Facebook page. Hosted by Eric Latiff.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, we see that build-up bouncing off Mombasa Road, going towards North Airport Road today, and then out onto Outering, going in the eastern part of the city as well, towards the eastern bypass, all the way to the AP Training College Junction. There you'll see some traffic as then folks now try to get out towards Utwala and using the long route to Thika Road. Outering, not too bad as you get past that little junction as you head off past Embakasi. That should be all right. Jogo Road building up after the train station. We're looking at Langata Road towards the roundabouts, and then on Huru Highway through and through to in and outbound from Westlands. That continues this morning. Look like it's already going to be a crazy Friday. On the Thika Superhighway, going all the way from Survey through to the Pangani Underpass, that has built up. And we're seeing some action happening already on Limuru Road this morning, just approaching the City Park. Okay, so Friday has a day in store. Well, let's see what it looks like in a short while. But in the meantime, be careful. Let us know what you see. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127. Let us know what your morning looks like.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
25 minutes to 7, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Ndu?
Yes.
What's in the papers?
Well, the KICD, of course, you're very interested in that. There's some relief for the grade 7 home activities, and that is because now their take-home activities has been reduced. There was a lot of jostling.
Grade 7.
Grade 7. Current
Standard
grade
7.
7. Grade 7.
There's
a lot of-
No, hold it.
You just wait.
7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Comes after 6 before 8.
But
What's
they
the
are
problem?
standards now. You have up to grade 4, 5s and 6s.
Do you think you'll let me read the story? Or
Yeah, I'm waiting
about
for
the
the
story?
story.
Eric?
Yes.
Read the story.
Yeah, me, I'm waiting for you to read the story. Why aren't you reading the story?
7?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we were at 7.
The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development has bowed to pressure from parents and reduced the number of home and community activities grade 7 learners are expected to carry out. In the revised curriculum designed for grade 7, which forms the first year of junior secondary, the KICD has limited community service learning to one integrated activity that will cover various subjects. The CSL, which is this community service learning, will be covered as a topic in life skills education. So remember, we're getting to that place where at junior secondary, they start to take on a lot of these life skills that comes in now addition to your core subjects, right? The activity will mostly be school-based with community interaction limited to data collection and related actions. The activity can be done in 1 to 2 weeks outside classroom time. The designs read in part. So it's not been implemented yet, and I understand why you're saying standard and grade, all right? So at
It's a future grade 7s.
Exactly. So at the point when they get into grade, so understand that there had been parental and teacher-based engagement with the KICD, and they were saying, hold on a minute, with what you have created, it's going to be too much. We will not be able to handle it. As we're just getting into junior secondary, you want us to do all this work in class, and then you want us to do all this work outside. So KICD has said, okay, remember that meeting that they had in Machakos, etc.? They came up and said, all right, we understand. So what we'll do is we'll reduce the number, making it a little bit easier then for you to coordinate. The activity can be done in 1 to 2 weeks outside classroom time. KICD explained that they would not expect grade 7 books to have as many activities as were in previous grades, where every substrand equivalent to a subtopic had an activity prescribed. So now there will just be one as opposed to 7, which is a great reduction. The changes will be a major relief for parents who had complained on social media and other forums that the new curriculum was burdensome to them. Parents lamented that they had to carry out the activities on behalf of their learners due to limited time and that the materials required were many and expensive. There were also complaints that illiterate parents were unable to help their children with activities, which was another sore thumb. So there was a briefing last year. KICD took textbook developers to provide alternatives to digital activities. I've got to say that this is one organization for me that really embodies what engagement ought to look like. You're taking into the situation on the ground and they said, okay, we've developed this curriculum, right? And we have a digital aspect. Then they come back and they say, hold on a minute, what about those who do not have access? So can we make it easier for them? So you go back to the drawing board and think, what can we do? Make it a little bit easier.
The complaints, though, were from current CBC parents. That is the grade 3s, 4s, right? And 5s. And that has not been revised. The community service learning in those grades will still remain as it is. What will only be reduced is, if I understand this story correct, is when you get into junior secondary, you'll not now be required to do those home-based, a lot of activities. You'll only reduce the number of activities, but you'll still have some CSL learning. But today's grade 5s, they'll still go home and ask for you to help them make an aeroplane.
Yeah. But the thing with now grade 7 was that for every subtopic, every single one, there was this community learning. So you had to divide yourself between your class core work as well as then now this community and data collection. And it was going to be too much at that level for them. They still feel that grade 4, 5, and 3, 4, and 5, that they still feel that whatever they're asking, folks to do now is not too burdensome.
My question, CBC is a good idea because we want those that community-based learning. We want that kind of integrated learning, promoting that kind of critical learning. However, must we always implement education curricula in this kind of hit and miss style, learning by doing? Why can't we? The experts had advised, and if you look at the political language, this is possibly what caused CS Amina her education job, because the experts had advised education curriculums are first piloted. And after you pilot them, you learn and then you develop the materials and you roll out based on a trial process, not create a curriculum and just implement. We did the same with 844. 844 was foisted on students, huge burden, then slowly aligned while people are learning. Must we always learn by doing? And what are the impacts on the students that are being subjected to these kind of random changes?
Many would argue that what you're suggesting is exactly what they're doing now, because what they've done is that they've started with the lower grades, and then as they go, every year now, a new class, because
they've been able to implement a curriculum grade by grade.
Hold on, they're saying that this is what they're seeing, that they've seen that they've introduced 1, 2, 3. They've done the assessment for 4s. They're going on to the next grade. They're seeing that as they go, they can train and move forward. So many would argue that the thing that you're talking about piloting, that they've piloted over a shorter period of time, they've seen that it has worked to some degree, then they move on to the next.
Piloting is different from implementing, and it's really learning through the mistakes. Of course, there will always be mistakes, but the point made is this. And the experts were saying, when you look at curriculum development across the world, it takes time to develop because you need to build the resources, you need to train the personnel, you need to sort out as many kinks as you can.
Of course.
We don't do that in Kenya.
If we take the argument that it's been piloted, over what period of time?
They actually had a time frame. No, they had a time frame.
And but I'm saying they've not stopped. They had a time frame.
Now it's implementation.
Yeah.
I think there was a piloting stage.
There was.
On those initial conversations that we're having at KICD and we're devising this and saying, let's roll out CBC, there was some bit of piloting. And remember, as we talk about experts, the people in the Ministry of Education are experts. The people at the KICD are experts as well.
Those are serious. Those
big time.
I agree.
Not just the political heads.
I agree.
But the technocrats in the ministry.
I agree. They're serious experts. The people who are talking to are part of the stakeholder consultations. How do you know the people in KICD didn't want to pilot? The point I'm making is this. There was political expediency overruled expert opinion. When you hear stakeholder experts speaking, don't assume it's just those external people speaking. They represent the view in the sector as opposed to the political view. And the point I'm raising is, unfortunately, politics, education and education curriculum have become a political tool at a very high cost to the teachers, to the learners, and to the system that is not properly resourced and all of that. So that is the point I'm raising. And I'm asking, must we always do this?
If indeed we piloted, as has been suggested, what were the findings of the piloting?
We didn't pilot. There was some sort of pilot, but, and I'm saying this based on conversations. There was a conversation that I was privy to. The way you pilot is you do a pilot implementation. Here, the design and the push to implement, like I said, a CS lost her job. Because, if you remember, she said, let us step back and take a little bit of time to listen to what the feedback is.
Just the very concept of piloting, you want to roll out something to the whole country. You cannot then decide that you're going to pilot this thing, say, in Tana River. It doesn't represent the whole country. The sampling has to be representative, and over a period of time where the actual curriculum that you're talking about is actually put into practice so that you can see how people respond to it. And it can't be for a month or two.
Exactly.
Ideally, minimum a year. Then you cannot argue that you've actually had an opportunity to see how the teachers interact with it, how the parents interact, how the students interact. You will have the information. Now, that information is what is then, as you say correctly, used to now roll it out and say, we found this kink, we found the other, this is what we saw. And in this area, these are the challenges that we saw. So even as we implement, this is what we need to do specifically for this area. Now, on this one, Wanjiru is right. This thing was steamrolled politically because by the 844 system, same. I know because I was a teacher then. Same. There was talk of piloting. Groups were formed to discuss and to see the way forward. Then all of a sudden, implement. And you're thinking, I thought we were supposed to, politics took over.
Yeah. And what's the collateral damage?
Actually, I'm asking the question, to what end? To show that you are able to bring in something new and better? Really?
And can I also add on to that? When you're implementing a new system, a new way of thinking, there's a lot to be said for building stakeholder buy-in for the sake of continuity, because we're going to have a new administration that comes in. What if this new administration comes in and says, hey, this CBC thing, we're not quite feeling it? It pays, because education is the heart of, it's really the foundation of the country. It would have paid to have stakeholder buy-in. Then you can have a measured, participatory, supported rollout as opposed to a political program. So it is odious that the Jubilee administration of Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, decided that education and implementing this was a low-hanging fruit for political reasons. Playing politics with the lives of learners, it's immoral.
It's 13 minutes to 7.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Right, at 13:07. Wanjiru?
My story is a small story that, let me find it.
Take your time.
Hey, I got carried away by the discussion on education. It was small. It was small but big. Small but significant because it's about...
Tucked in somewhere in the middle pages of the paper.
Nyandarua County News. Kimemia rolls out ward committees to monitor development. So Nyandarua Governor Francis Kimemia has rolled out a comprehensive mechanism for monitoring and assessing his government's projects at the grassroots, comprising selected from diverse backgrounds across all 25 wards. Due diligence was followed. They want to assess value for money. He said it also incorporates the national government. And apart from monitoring projects, the committee will tackle issues of peace, cohesion, environment, resource allocation. Now, apart from the fact that this is rolling out quite late, because obviously we're heading into elections, in one way you can also say it's useful because the data they collect will assist whoever comes in. But the County Government Act anticipates that county governments will set up these ward development committees so that the lowest unit of the county integrated development plan, the 5-year plan, is this participatory. Yeah.
And who are the members? Who should be the members of such a committee?
It's okay. We need regulation, so counties need to regulate.
So they need to come up with structures.
Well, what you say is, who are my constituents? Who is in the wards? If it's a majority of young people, herders, farmers, you need to represent
the various interest groups. So you'll have gender representation, you'll have economic activity representation, you'll have religious representation and such.
Exactly.
And then the ward administrator
Right.
is expected to be the chair or the lead of this?
Now, those are the very good questions. This article doesn't get into those details. This is more like maybe a PR kind of article because it doesn't ask those questions.
What do they do, the committees?
It depends, and that's a good question. It depends on the powers that have been given. Here he talks about value for money. We want to get value for money. That is why we want the committee to be active in following the implementation process for development projects. If a kilometer of road requires 50 trucks of maram, the truck should ensure this is what is delivered and used. So one of the things it's going to do is to monitor at that level. There are lots of questions. Accountability. Lots of questions. Are they involved at the tendering process? Can they veto, for instance, tendering processes? The powers. So creating them is great. Makueni created, they have a very good model, very strong project development committees. You can't get paid if they don't sign you on. I understand also in Busia, they've created the same, I understand. But a majority of
the counties don't have.
A majority of governors have not decentralized this power. And this is what actually devolution is about, power to the people. To say, these aren't the projects we agreed on. This is too expensive. This contractor was blacklisted. So it's an empowerment process and it's also an accountability process.
There's a gentleman we spoke to last year from Siaya at length. And I think this is Nduko. And this is what he was pushing, wasn't it? Something similar. These kind of structures have from village and ward level going all the way up. And it's citizen-led, right?
It's an extremely valid point because anything else seems to take the view that the villagers have no clue what it is they want. And that is not true. They actually do.
Exactly.
They have a very, very clear idea of not only what they want, but they even have priorities.
Yeah.
And they know this is what
they know what's important to them.
Villagers build schools, built churches, built
health centers,
contribute.
They even build roads
and cattle
markets.
And markets.
Yes, they do.
Actually, in Kenya, we progress despite government. Honestly, if you look at it, look at the health sector. Something like almost 30% is out of pocket. Another huge chunk is faith-based health institutions, despite government that overtaxes us, and then we pay for our education, we pay for our water, we pay for despite government.
We pay for our government.
And we pay for electricity.
Tunajivunia.
City, your story?
My story is an interesting one. Huh? Let me go to the beginning and then take my time slowly as I tell you what it is. The problem with Fridays is that sometimes you're spoiled for choice. You wonder, should I choose a political topic? Should I choose a social topic? Because most of what you actually read is just politics, politics, politics. However, page 10 of the Star. Kenya to adopt 2 tablets for treatment of COVID-19 patients. This is an article written by John Mushangi. WHO recommended baricitinib for critical patients with
You should have practiced.
No,
you just go with but you're very brave. And
what I read first and what I'm reading now is different. I'm wondering, is this what I read the first time? Okay. Sotrovimab for mild COVID-19. By the way, these are both drugs. All right. Now, this is what it says. Kenya is expected to adopt, just so that you understand, we are talking vaccination, we are now talking tablets. Okay? So that instead of being injected, you can
swallow,
ingest tablets. All right? It's an option being given.
Wait.
This is treatment.
This is treatment. This is when you go to hospital.
Vaccination.
No.
Like ivermectin and the others.
Exactly.
No, this is
so we
treatment.
Can't go over the counter now.
No, this is treatment. Let me start again.
Yes.
You are vaccinated, you are injected.
Yes.
Now, when you then, so that you can prevent. However, when you have COVID, you've contracted and we know COVID. Then for treatment,
You can swallow this.
Right.
In the same way, for prevention, remember, HIV, it has been tablets. Now, there is injection. A discussion for another day. All right? So
it's a big deal whether it's a tablet or an injection?
it's a very big deal.
Yeah.
It's a very, very big
The
deal
whole
because
thing of,
ingesting all the time. And by
every
the injection
cocktail.
is more preventative. As in, you take the injection, instead of going to take the tablets on a daily basis, the injection is supposed to last a longer period,
Efficacy
months.
is higher.
Over a longer period of time. Now, it's the other way around with COVID. COVID, we started with the injection and we've gone to tablet for
And a
treatment.
value approach.
Yes.
There have been no tablets used in the treatment of COVID.
One of the things that has been certain about COVID, they're not certain what it is you actually need to do.
No, I'm talking about like, because we're talking about treatment.
It is
when
treatment.
somebody, for example,
Where
has
going
been
to
admitted to hospital
Yes.
and they're being treated for
Yes.
COVID,
Yes.
there's this whole mix of drugs that they
because
try
they're
on.
treating the symptoms.
Yes.
There are
Which you assume they inject.
There are few circles that have been taking a particular tablet, although there has been rage about whether it has been approved or not. And there are those who, for example, were trying to bring it into the country at a very, cheap price, etc. But in terms of what medical circles have said you can go ahead and do, it has not been formalized. But there are those who've been taking it and said to have then they've taken it for 7 days and then have healed. So now that is one you take. It's like you're taking chloroquine for malaria. You're taking this iron,
COVID.
iron-based tablet for COVID.
So it's progress to have a position. So the issue you're raising is
What
that
I'm saying is these aren't drugs that have been invented for COVID. No.
They've been there before.
They've been there before. For instance, baricitinib is actually used for the treatment of severe, I want you to take a guess, rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
That's what it's been used for. But it's been found...
Inflammation.
Yes, it's been found that it works well with severe cases of COVID. Right? Same with the sotrovimab. Does the same thing. Lab tests find drugs that have been used for other ailments. Remember, the treatment for COVID, they've even been using antiretrovirals. Because HIV is a virus. So all we are saying is now WHO is coming out and saying, hey, folks, lab tests have proved that these two drugs work well. They limit the activity of this COVID virus. So we are recommending that when you're treating somebody who has a severe case of COVID, you can use these drugs. That's in essence what I'm saying. But in many cases, you will find that a lot of treatment is actually experimental. Even the doctors, when they're honest, will tell you, this one we think ought to work. We've seen it works, we're going to. But now these lab tests taken over a period of time now. Again, difference. Lab tests, one thing. They're not saying it has been tested. Yes, over a large population of people.
It's based on the feedback they're getting
from the labs.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying...
This is basically Kenya government saying it's okay.
Is it Kenya government or WHO?
WHO has said and Kenya government is saying...
The Kenya government has now adopted it for Kenya.
Yes, they're saying
you can work. If we found you as a medic treating a patient and giving them this,
We'd be okay.
would be okay
We'd
with
be okay with you doing that.
Or maybe they're going a bit further and saying this is our guideline.
You know?
Like this is how we treat TB, this is how we treat malaria, this is our guideline.
I don't think they've gone there yet.
Yeah, is
It's
that
basically
what this
saying
is?
we
That
are
what
allowing
this is saying?
in
allowing you to
the
use
mix
it.
of medication to use.
We recommend.
We also you are allowed to use this.
These are working.
Yeah.
And I must say, on COVID matters, I criticize government on many things. I think in terms of the medical stances, they've done well. They've done well. They're okay. Why I don't want to do it grudgingly, but yes, their response was quick. It was prompt. There were problems, of course, on the human rights approach, but I'm saying on the medical side, especially with the science, I think that has been well handled. So I'm looking at institutions like KEMRI, the science and the scientific fraternity that supported this response, much as we didn't hear them. What we've seen of them is we have a solid, we have a
So
very
that
solid
wasn't too
industry
painful
there.
now, was it, Wanjiru?
No, it wasn't.
Hey.
No,
Very good.
Even a broken clock is right 2 times a day.
She has gone into everybody else. It's a Camry.
Anybody
but was struggling, really struggling. Let me try.
If it works, it works.
Yes, indeed.
And
Keep
if it
right
doesn't,
here.
it's not my fault.
More conversations coming up. In the next hour, let's talk about accountability gaps in the budget ceiling discussion. Our guest, Dr. Abraham Rugo. Good morning, 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. All One Kenya Alliance principals have been sent their invites to Musalia Mudavadi's Amani National Congress NDC slated for Sunday 23rd. According to the party's Secretary General Simon Gikuru, only the invited leaders will be expected at the venue, with Speaker Justin Muthui and Tujibebe Kenya Movement leader William Kambogo also expected. ODM party leader Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto have not been invited, with Gikuru saying that they are Musalia's opponents in the presidential race. However, according to Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala, the Deputy President William Ruto now considers himself a friend, indicating a possibility of the two leaders working together. Some of the leaders who defected from the party, including Matungu MP Oscar Nabolindo, have said they will attend, although ANC Deputy Leader Ayub Savula, who has since joined the Azimio la Umoja movement, said he would not be present at the meeting. Mudavadi finds himself with various options to either go to the ballot alone, join forces with either Deputy President William Ruto, or ODM Chief Raila Odinga, or go to the ballot with the One Kenya Alliance. We, however, wait to witness the tsunami he said he will unleash on Sunday. Now, ODM leader Raila Odinga has continued to discount his political rival, Deputy President William Ruto's presidential bid, saying that he has not delivered during his tenure and should pave way for new leadership. Odinga faulted the Deputy President over the unsettled developments he promised to Kenyans, deeming him incapable to deliver to Kenyans. The former Premier accused Ruto of not owning up to his failures, adding that the DP has instead been blaming the handshake for his shortcomings. The former Prime Minister was speaking at Kehancha Stadium in Kuria, Migori County, where he championed his Azimio la Umoja movement. Now, the identification of the bodies retrieved from Yala River in Siaya County continues today, even as more bodies continue to be found. As of yesterday, only 2 families were able to identify their loved ones. The brothers of Philemon Chepkwony, Meshach and Ben Chepkwony were the first to identify the body of their brother and his friend who disappeared on December 2nd last year. Peter Ndirangu and Philemon were traveling with 2 other people when they were last seen along the Nairobi-Nakuru highway. Their car was later found in Gilgil. Ndirangu's family said their brother's body was badly wounded.
Peter ni besti yake, hata washatembea nyumbani, anakuwa watu pamoja. Alikuwa misi na kwa tumewajulisha brother yake mwenye huwa tulikuwa tukitafuta pamoja. My brother who was in Nairobi found missing appeared in Nyeri here. That is not okay at all. He was tortured. So shocking. Inaonekana tumbo ilidungwa na hata kichwa.
Another family that managed to identify the body of their relative is that of Eustace Ndirangu from Nyeri, who disappeared 2 months ago.
Walikuwa natoka wakienda Nakuru. Na kwenda Nakuru alipigia bibi yake karibu saa 3 ya usiku, sasa hiyo tarehe 16, akimwambia anaweza rudi Nairobi. Lakini sasa bibi yake kukifika saa 4 saa 5 anapiga simu yake haishukuliwi. Akapiga mpaka ilikatika Wednesday saa 9. Kwa uso hapa tunafanana. Alafu mdomo. Alafu vile nimetolewa chini miguu nimeona ni ya my brother. Kwa hivyo sina doubt ya kusema ati huyo si my brother, ni my brother. Na nimeshukuru Mungu juu nimemtafuta tangu mwezi wa 11. Sasa familia sijui hata vile tutafikiria juu. Huko ni bali kukuja kutupwa karibu.
ni mbali sana.
Our thoughts and condolences to the families and request that the authorities do what they must to make sure that justice is served. Now, a woman who was murdered and her body found Monday evening dumped near the GSU's Record Squad camp in Ruiru, Kiambu County has been identified. Police reports say that the body is that of 18-year-old Esther Wambui, a waitress by profession, who went missing on the morning of January 17, 2021, as she made her way to work, 2022. Wambui's team positively identified the body after arriving at Juja police station, where they were later directed to the mortuary. According to reports on the day in question, the deceased was escorted by her boyfriend Joseph Ngige to a roundabout bordering the workplace, where he bid her farewell, expecting to see her back home in the evening. Ngige and Wambui, who are both from Nakuru, lived together in a single-room house in Ruiru. Ngige has since expressed shock as to why his girlfriend would be murdered in such a bizarre manner. Detectives are of the opinion that Wambui was likely raped and killed by a murderers at a different location before her body was dumped. And the Garissa court has sentenced 2 men to life in prison for the crime of robbery with violence that led to the death of another man. The accused Daniel Makau Mulonza and Alexander Vundi Musyoka were sentenced by Garissa Chief Magistrate Cosmas Maundu, who delivered the sentence. The court heard that the pair robbed the victim of his personal items before clobbering him to death using a metal rod. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Assetto. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
The rain is coming down and traffic is building up on many roads this morning, and we're looking at it building up on Gong Road, coming off on the other side of the city on Jogo Road. Uhuru Highway is taking a hit, and that's coming off of Kenyatta Avenue from Valley Road. Coming out of Westlands, in and outbound traffic is building up here. The Thika Superhighway, that has done its thing all the way past that outer ring junction, way past what we are looking at, also building up on Kiambu Road. Limuru Road, in and outbound traffic is doing its thing this morning, and it's really sticky coming out of Westlands. Okay, folks, what are we going to say? You guessed it. Use your bypasses. You've got the Red Hill Link Road coming out of Westlands, the southern bypass for Mombasa Road, outer ring, and then you go towards the eastern bypass. There are options for us to use this morning. Longer routes indeed, but you can get out of the drama that is likely to be this morning's traffic with the wet and slippery roads. So please be careful as you traverse, guys. And then if you find yourself in a sticky situation or in a better one, so that others can use it as well, talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It's 8 minutes
the
after
only
7.
way
Good
to
morning.
start.
How are you doing? Welcome to the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this lovely Friday, 21st day of January 2020.
Thank
We're on
you.
the same
Forward.
Just wanted to confirm that. You know? Yes, so we're going to have a conversation this about a budget ceiling, debt ceiling, how we're managing our finances, the public finance management. We have a guest in the studio who will be joining us in addition to our guest host today, Wanjiru Gikonyo of the Institute for Social Accountability. But let's begin with the day's ulimi mkono proverb.
Yes, it's actually shimo la ulimi mkono haufutiki.
Now read it again now with proper punctuation.
Shimo la ulimi, Mkono, comma, hafutiki. The hole you dig with your tongue cannot be erased with the hand.
I have come round and I'm like...
Now you can see it.
This is a good proverb.
Wanjiru is a believer.
Yes. And I'm sure we can find some practical examples from our present political class. Let me just apply myself to that. Next hour, I'll have case study.
By 8 o'clock.
Case study.
And then by 9 o'clock, things would have been done. Wanjiru is throwing out these generous
very
compliments
morning.
very early in the morning.
No, a good thing. We said even a clock that is broken is right 2 times.
It's 2022.
And that's not where I'm
Oh, no.
But the shivo can be something nice. It doesn't have to be something bad.
Let me tell you, I agree with you fully because I've just been referred to as a broken clock.
But it's right twice a day.
And I understand, but at least I'm right twice a day.
At least.
At least.
Hey, I will not survive this one. Can we move on?
Dr. Abraham Rugo is our guest this hour. He is the country manager at the International Budget Partnerships Kenya. Dr. Rugo, thank you for joining us in the studio.
Karibu sana.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And this is a promise I had made, so I had to be here. But it's really a pleasure to join you guys here and for the conversations that are here.
You've started the year on a good note.
Keeping promises.
Keeping promises.
Yeah. I mean, January is not yet over, so at least let me keep one resolution.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, but it's really.
At least you can go back and tick.
Yes,
Yeah?
that one, nimefikisha.
When you hear that proverb
Yeah.
of ulimi, shimo,
Yeah.
koma,
Yeah.
koma, did you get it immediately you heard it?
I struggled a bit the first time he read it. Then when he put the commas, it now came down, that basically that what you say with your mouth, you cannot try to come later, and practically I was just thinking about things that people pronounce, good or bad. And then later try to issue statements.
Clarification.
Qualifications, and certifications.
Yes. I actually meant. I did not.
Yes, I did not mean, I was misquoted and all those other things. Yeah, and I think it applies really in daily life, in practical life. But as I was saying, really, it doesn't have to be bad things. So I think the goal should be try and keep, say the right things, make the right promises. And now that we are going to be talking about budgets, basically tell wananchi what is practical and doable instead of cursing and sending messages of doom. I think we can send a message of hope.
So now that we're being hopeful, in June last year, we were told that we are going to spend 3.6 trillion shillings this year. And we were going to raise that from various quarters. And we were going to implement the Big Four. We were going to revive our economy from the ravages of COVID-19. We were going to have a better social structure in the country. Well, how are we doing?
First of all, is to say that 3.6 basically included some about 400 billion that we were planning to roll over, which basically is money we were saying we owe a few guys, but that one we are not paying. So the actual budget is about 3.2 trillion. We were making this against a promise of two things. One is that the agenda that had been set through the Big Four was clear, was crystal clear when you think about food security, manufacturing, housing, and healthcare. But I think it's right to say that we seem not to have been, from the very beginning of the Big Four, there was not much clarity, first of all, in terms of how far we are planning to go with this. The four, if you take, for example, the four the pilot cases, Makueni, Kisumu, Nyeri, I forget the last county. Isiolo of UHC, the report has never even been published of what did they find, what did they see. What I know is that counties were in protest because they were providing services, not getting paid and not getting reimbursed in that sense. When you think about manufacturing is the big thing, but it's been declining in terms of its contribution to our economy. Yet we know very well employment creation, real income generation, and household incomes will not just come from agriculture. I know there is this whole fascination that because people are producing, because CT is producing skuma wiki behind his house, he's a farmer, he's probably contributing to agriculture. But if he cannot sell that skuma, if he cannot add value, which is the place of manufacturing. Housing, again, was there. So what am I saying? The second assumption was that we were going to raise revenue, ordinary revenue. Now, out of that ordinary revenue, we already had a gap of about a trillion bob. It was about 930 billion then, that we didn't know where to find the money from. And the assumption was that we were going to tighten things in KRA and be able to raise. So far, two things have happened. One is that actually KRA has surpassed its targets, at least as of September, and even December. But they've surpassed their targets by digging deeper in the pockets that are already available, which basically means they have tightened, of course, the tax even on fuel tax and all that.
But Terry,
yeah,
when you say tightened, what do you mean they've burdened the citizens more?
They have burdened those who are paying more. There are two aspects of it. So first of all, there is a general burden that is shared across board, because when you increase fuel tax, what you do is that you spread that across board. And it was part of the conditions anyway that the IMF gave, that you guys need to raise more taxes. Fuel prices shot by about 20 bob within a short while. That happened. But the expenditure side of things was not rationalized, because the expenditure side of things is still going, is still going up. So what happens is that one would expect that if you have a hole in your budget, then you set out to implement a couple of things, then you raise even some more revenue than maybe even what you had anticipated. You rationalize your expenditure a bit, to say, okay, fine, it doesn't look like we will be able to borrow as much as we had thought. Why don't we try? Because the challenge has been rationalizing of that gap.
Can you explain rationalization?
So the language, let me put this, the language that is even in our books of budgets has been the language of fiscal consolidation. Rationalization is to say, I intend to build a house of 10,000 shillings. Let me use that example. I have 5,000 bob. Now, because it is clear I am not likely to raise the 5,000 shillings and I still need to build this house, can I reduce the cost? Can I remove a few things of what I need to do? And at least, or can I use cheaper material? Because that's the language of rationalization. Whenever we talk about fiscal consolidation, that's a whole, it's a big language of saying, can we spend more efficiently? Can we spend on priorities? Can we spend on things that we must spend on? And that period, the big spending, in my opinion, was basically going to be COVID vaccines. Anything that helps you to reopen the economy.
Right.
That was going to be the big spending. We still haven't gotten, vaccines to the extent that we needed. We needed, I think, the last time, I remember even Nirongo was here and we did some discussion. We did about 34 billion or thereabout, but I think the total allocation was coming to about 14 billion, hoping the rest will be donated, as had been the case. So far, we are spending a lot on recurrent. But there's the other thing that I needed to speak about. They are the costs that we must incur, and that is the cost. We call it big language consolidated fund services. What does this entail? It entails three things. The debts we need to pay. We needed to pay a huge amount in this particular period. The total was coming to almost 1 trillion of how much we need to pay in terms of debt servicing. There's pensions. A language that, a discussion that often we are, growling over and hoping it will go away. But the truth is that the pension bill in this country is huge. I don't know for a certain how much. There are assumptions that if you were to put all the money that is owed to pensioners, including those who are being told to delay their going on pension because hakuna pesa ya kuwalipa, and you consider how much delays there are, you're talking of almost a bill of about 2 trillion in terms of the total amount. So what has been happening over the last couple of years, what we have seen is that the pension bill has more than tripled over the last about 6 years. Started about 50 billion, we are now at 150 billion.
It's compounding.
Let me just use, it's grown 3 times. You see, those are mandatory expenses. But then we also have constitutional commissions and all that comes with that. Those are mandatory expenses. Well, that means before we pay for medical equipment, before we pay for vaccines, before we pay for agriculture subsidies, if any that we are providing, before we even pay for the roads, That is money that you
we
must
first get this money.
Yes. So yes. So the point connecting is that yes, you are raising more revenue, but a lot of that revenue is being taken to repay. So currently, out of every 100 bob we are raising, 65 of that, 63, 65 of that is going. So we are left with 35 shillings for everything else. You know?
There was this analogy you gave of the 10,000 shilling house.
Yes.
And the availability of 5.
Yes.
Given that in our situation we don't have 5, we actually have 3.
Yes.
Do we see any activity within the government that indicates that they are willing to build this house for just 3,000 shillings?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. And the reason I say this is because for all time, the processes that were supposed to help us use 3 seem to be getting frustrated. Let me start with the first one. The making sense of our good parastatals.
KQ and company.
KQ is just the big, the big guy in town. But you have all these parastatals. We have had like 3, if not 4, processes of trying to make sense of how do we consolidate parastatals. Abdikadir, I think, is the last report. Karaoke had done one under KEPSA. There have been reports. Some even brought together, you remember the major one was the agriculture one, parastatals, that were all merged into Agriculture and Food Authority. As we talk, before long, all the parastatals have gone back.
They went back into...
So what's happening, and those parastatals, when we talk about publicly guaranteed debt, a lot of that debt is with those parastatals. You know, starting with Kenya Airways, you have Kenya Ports Authority, you have Kenya Power and the Kenya Pipeline. Those are like the big ones, you know. But then even as you come down, whether it's the coffee boards, the tea boards, the SISO board, then you know all these different boards. That's one big piece, you know.
Okay. Let me understand what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, you mentioned the big parastatals.
Yes.
Now you say that the debt is nestled with these parastatals.
The publicly guaranteed debt is nestled. Then there is the debt that the national government takes in and of itself for the functions they need to perform.
For the SGR, for
the roads.
Yes.
Expressway, blah,
so
blah,
now,
blah.
all the parastatals you mentioned, with the exception of Kenya Power, at some level are profit-making parastatals.
They are supposed to be profit-making.
No. They are profit-making parastatals. I'm not theorizing. I'm actually stating it as it is.
Like which one?
Pipeline.
Kengen.
Yes.
They make money.
They make money. True.
What happens at the port is obscure. So it's a bit difficult to figure out whether they make money or not. But it's a monopoly, so they ought to. All right?
Correct.
And they don't make 2 or 3 shillings. They make tons and tons of money. Now, when you talk about public guaranteed debt, explain that a bit.
So public guaranteed debt is that, so when you walk into a bank today and you want to take a loan, somebody needs to guarantee that in the event you are not able to pay, somebody else will pay. In SACCOs, we have guarantors. So your fellow members sign for you. In a bank, if you don't have, you go, take your title deed or your logbook and they say, in the event you are not able to pay to meet your debt obligations, we will come and pick that collateral and dispose it and repay ourselves. So what the government does is that it guarantees, because these are state-owned enterprises. So the government owns Kenya Pipeline as a state-owned enterprise. It's supposed to make its own money, but it's still owned by government. So in the event it is not able to meet its obligations, the government, the government of Kenya in this case, is supposed. Now, where the game now becomes a bit difficult is one that, as you said, there's a bit of opaqueness in how the monies and the spendings and all that. I mean, look at example, for instance, Kenya Power and Lighting Company, which is in drama every day. If you just look at your sheet or your SMS when you buy your tokens, there is no reason why Kenya Power should not be performing very well.
No.
There's no reason, absolutely no reason, because for fact, this is a service that is consumed every day. Kenya Power should be playing, these competitors is Safaricom.
Right, and you pay for it.
Yes, you
even
pay.
if you don't pay on a daily, even if you're paying at the end of the month, you're paying for it.
Majority of us
Without
actually
payments,
pay
you're cut
upfront.
off. Yes.
We pay upfront.
Yes.
So with or without consuming, it's like airtime. You buy it upfront, whether you call or you don't. Whether you use power or not. But because of the corruption, and this is something that perhaps part of the reforms that have been proposed, is that the parastatals have become havens of channeling off. When you look at the budget books, a couple of years ago, we used to have even audits that are very specific and how much money is going to each. Nowadays, we have lump sum transferred to other government agencies. And you see a lump sum of 10B. You get? And questions around, so what is going on in Kenya Power? Who are the people supplying this? What are the contracts? What kind of contracts are there? When you think about the costs, you read that report where the presidentially commissioned report said that some of the information could not be divulged by officials within Kenya Power. And it's the same story. There's even a bigger concern of ethnicization of these. Recently I was in a meeting and a friend of mine said that sometimes when you touch a parastatal, you're touching an ethnic group. Because again, and this is documented. There's a report that shows NCIC did that just to show how much these have become like, CT becomes the person in charge of a certain sector.
He's called
the
CEO.
The CEO. Anakuja na watu wake. Anakuja na watu wake because, and of course that plays in the, so the point I'm trying to say is that there's still a lot of opaqueness in terms of, we put in money into you as Kenya Airways, so we put money into you as Kenya Pipeline, but how much are we getting back in return? Because this is, and that has been even the discussion with IMF of saying, can we now just privatize these things completely, and say they are no longer state-owned enterprises? We have proper, PPP kind of arrangements. We know you provide us this service, and we pay you for that, or put them in competition. Britain tried a bit of that.
Quit
Germany has
monopoly.
tried. Put them in competition with private sector.
So, Dr. Rugo, what do you see? Because, I think through what we've done, we've looked at so many gaps, so many holes, so many issues, right? Now, those two suggestions that we make, so we quit the monopoly, because that's what we're looking at now. A lot of what is being supported by government in terms of finances, then it turns out to be a black hole, and we don't see the end of it. And there's a lot of money then that is missing. Or go the privatization route. What would we be looking at here? Because at the beginning, you said something else very interesting, is that what ends up happening is that government then goes back to the people who are paying tax. Not everybody. The people who had previously paid tax
3
are the
million of
ones,
us.
exactly, out of 47, right?
Yeah.
The government comes back and tightens it a little bit more, and that's where they end up getting. But if you looked carefully, like you say, this is opaque, but if you were able to see, if it was transparent, you would then be able to see that all this money then that somehow disappears into this black hole would probably now relieve these 3 million people from having to tighten their belt anymore.
You're right. I think, in my opinion, I think there are two ways to go this. First of all, there is no way we are going to make progress unless we tighten the rule of law. Because there is no punishment and there is no reward. Whether you perform well, take an example, KenGen. With all the geothermal, with all the wind power, with all the generation, the efficiency at KenGen, it seems just to be getting lost. Because some of it is not even being bought by Kenya Power. We have enough power as we talk, to reduce the cost of power maybe by 50-60%. Now, KenGen is doing a very good job, and they are doing their best, and we know it's one of the very best run, parastatal. Comparatively across board. But first of all, we need to fix that there must be a reward, but there must also be a consequence of running down an institution like that. Secondly, I think we must introduce competition. I don't see any other way. We must introduce competition and ask, Kenyans need to have an option of where to buy power. And this has been tried in other countries. It doesn't have to be that you must buy power only from Kenya Power.
But don't we see an example here of what happened with that? Is that you had, for example, communications operations that was not working, introduced the private sector with mobile telephony, for example, and then you saw that things began to work.
Yeah.
And then the resident monopoly saw, okay, it's either we try to do better or we shut down or catch up.
Yeah, so and you see that competition needs to be there. Yeah. But I think what we are not saying is that there's a bigger political space in which then it has to do with how a society governs itself. How, for instance, the role of parliament in this as the representative of the people. We try to almost excuse them. The role of the representatives and the government that we elect of the president and that, because in all these places that we keep talking about, leadership is central to these decisions. And all the times you've talked about in the past, that we have had a situation where things are functioning, even within the parastatals that are functioning, leadership is at the center.
That's true.
Leadership is at the center. So we cannot excuse the role of leadership.
In everything, and accountability.
Yeah. So you're saying rule of law, competition, and leadership are the three essential ingredients?
They're the three, because when we, technically and legally, we have the frameworks. Because if it's in law, you can change.
Right.
But even when you look at the PFM Act, it does not in any way limit, the Constitution does not in any way limit, a progressive and a competitive space, where we can be able to provide a service, in a liberal market, as it were.
So the law is not the barrier, it's the failure of leadership.
Yeah.
Can I
want to take a
relate
break, and then you can come now. We pick up that conversation from that angle. It's 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Our guest is Dr. Abraham Rugo. Our guest host is Wanjiru Gikonyo. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Did you know that the largest number of incidents of state brutality occurred in the context of enforcing COVID-19 virus prevention control measures by police officers? In 2021, the Independent Medical Legal Unit IMLO documented and processed 198 cases of alleged state brutality and violence. That marked an increase of 31.31% from the previous year. Over the last 2 decades, IMLO has assisted over 5,000 victims of torture, cruelty, degrading and inhuman treatment through the support of a national network of professionals that include doctors, trauma counselors, lawyers, human rights monitors and journalists. For inquiries and clarifications, please contact IMLO's communication team through the contact line 0724 256 800 or visit www.imlo.org.
Owning a home is a dream for most Kenyans. In partnership with Mabati Rolling Mills, this Saturday, I, Olivia Otieno, host experts that will get you that much closer to realizing your dream of owning a home. Join me on Double O Direct from 10 a.m. on 94.4 SpiceFM. Live stream standardmedia.co.ke. MRM, 60 years of quality building solutions. Ukiweka, umeweka.
Mostly cloudy conditions, a sprinkle in the city at 15, highs of 25 and lows of 15. That's for Nairobi. It's mostly sunny at 14. In Nakuru, we'll see highs of 24 and lows of 13. 12 will be the low in a partly sunny Nyeri at the moment at 14, highs of 25. And we're looking at a cloudy Eldoret at 13, highs of 23 and lows of 11. Mostly cloudy conditions in Mombasa at 26, highs of 32 today. Mostly highs of 31 in Malindi, where it's at 26 and cloudy. Mostly cloudy at 19 in Kisumu, highs of 28. 28 will also be the high in Kakamega, which started off the morning sunny. Kampala is sunny at 16, highs of 28 and down to lows of 16 today. Continues to rain in Dar es Salaam at 25. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 24. It's a sunny morning in Johannesburg at 14, highs of 25 today and lows of 12. While there's a haze over the city of Lagos at 23, we'll see highs of 33 and lows of 22. It's raining in Kinshasa at 22. It'll go to highs of 32 today, back down to lows of 22.
spice up your...
Mombasa Road today, we're seeing quite a lot of traffic coming all the way from Sabaki, then past the Weybridge out towards the SGR. Very slow movement, and we're looking at it out and inbound. There's part of the road that has taken up some more construction. Diversion has been created. That's why we've been seeing the traffic that we have been in the last couple of days. So if you've not yet reached the turnoff, use the Southern Bypass as an option. Go the ICD route and get off Mombasa Road completely. Or if you're feeling that you can sit in traffic, you'll get to General Motors and you should be all right. Southern Bypass, like we said, looking pretty good. You can use that as an option. Let's look at the industrial area circuit, Lunga, Lusaka, Likoni, and then Jogoo, that area building up. Uhuru Highway then feeding off of quite a number, also building up this morning. Okay, Thika Superhighway, that continues, guys. Limu Road quite tight as well. Coming out of Westlands, use the Red Hill Link Road, saving a lot of lives since 6 o'clock. Let's talk. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Let the conversation continue at 25 minutes to 8. This is the Situation Room. Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, CT Muga, guest host, Wanjiru Gikonyo, and our guest this hour, Dr. Abraham Rugo, country manager, the International Budget Partnerships Kenya. Wanjiru, you had a burning question.
Yes. First of all, thanks so much, Dr. Rugo. This is great. We work together under the Okoh Uchumi campaign, and you're articulating some of the things we should be demanding. So the resolution to Kenya's debt crisis is rule of law, competition around these parastatals, and leadership. So these are the core aspects. I'd like to link that to two very important events coming up as Parliament is set to resume next week. One is there is a supplementary budget going to be under discussion. Of course, we don't have this, but I know the International Budget Partnership, of which you're the executive director, has been analyzing supplementary budget. So what would we want to see to begin to deal with the crisis? The other related issue is the discussion around the debt ceiling and the proposal to move away from the ceiling towards what they are calling a debt anchor. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this chimba ulimi shimo?
Alafu tutajaribu kufuta na mkono. No, thanks. So supplementary budget, what first of all are they? You know, when we our budget, the budget that we prepare, just like even at the household level or at a personal level, has two assumptions. One, that I am planning to spend on XYZ, and I'm planning to get an income on ABC, if I may use that. So you say, I'm planning to spend 100,000 and I hope to get 100,000. But two possibilities happen. The most desirable one is that you get 120. That then you have a surplus where you say, now I was planning actually not to go on holiday, or I was going to go, I was going to buy my mom something. I'm going to buy even my auntie who is equally needy. That's a desirable. But the reality is that often you don't get the 100 bob. You get 80 shillings or you get 70 shillings. Now, supplementary budgets so that's first in terms of income. But secondly, the second assumption that we make is that the things we have planned to do will be the only things demanding resources in the course of the year. So, for instance, when we started 2019-2020 budget year, which runs from July of 2019 to June, we didn't know there would be COVID. So we had planned for a normal year. You know, we didn't know that we would need to get into PPEs and all this testing and things like that. But then things come that completely shake up, emergencies happen. So supplementary budgets are supposed to help us reorganize our budget fast. Either our expenditures have remained the same, but our incomes have completely gone down. And therefore we try and reorganize so that we don't finish the year on a deficit. or some projects we had thought would make progress, of 50% or thereabout. By mid-year, we are still yet to issue a tender, and it's clear that this money is not going to be spent. So supplementary budgets are supposed to be done. But the challenge with supplementary budgets is that by design, which we are challenging, is that they are never public documents. So we see supplementary budgets after the fact. You see them, they are not, in fact, it's interesting because it's the only document in the budget process that is not public. But there's a good rationale that one would argue. The rationale could be, for instance, that because I have already approved the broader budget, you, the leaders, you, the government that we have given public trust, will act with good faith within the limits. Remember, we are saying that there is an emergency that has happened. Something has happened. You will reorganize the budgets within the limits of what was already prepared, and then you send to Parliament, where our representatives that we elected, so that we don't always have to make decisions, all of us at the same time, will. But what has happened is that then they have become the place where, and this is both at national level and county level, where basically things are reorganized with sometimes very limited rationale and good rationale for that matter.
For example?
Yes, I was coming to an example. So, for instance, we have seen situations whereby there are certain projects that are politically desired. We had a situation whereby, people went into a meeting. Basically, this was a discussion between the MCAs and their governor, and they agreed on other projects that were not initially in the budget. And then, therefore, what you see is that a supplementary budget is brought in and money is moved, to those political projects, as it were. Last year, at the national level, we had spending. A lot of it was tied to COVID, and therefore we had supplementary budgets that were coming to correct what had already been implemented.
Right.
So basically, you're just coming to make sure that when the accountants come to audit, when the Auditor General comes to audit, basically they find that the books look forward. But it's not that this was done, forward-looking, in terms of analysis that we have said. So every quarter, the government is supposed to prepare the budget implementation reports. They're supposed to tell you that you are planning to spend on X, Y, Z, but you have not received the money, or this ministry is not spending as fast as was supposed to be spent, but these are the ministry there's a greater need. So supplementary budgets are not made public. And by not making them public, then it means that it is very difficult for anybody to make a contribution and say, hey, what you're planning to spend on this movement of money, should have been in a different way. What, for instance, should we be expecting in this current supplementary budget? One would say, for instance, in this supplementary budget, you would want to see more money being put to vaccinate as many Kenyans practically possible. You want to see more money being put in preparing the education systems and structures for upper secondary. Junior secondary. I think it should be called senior primary, but that's a discussion for another day.
I think they do too.
Because I don't see how a primary teacher will now teach secondary. Teach secondary, and Kupet and all those other guys. So you expect those kind of movements. At this particular time, you also expect a fast tracking in every way to some of the engagements around UHC, so that to open facilities, to employ more doctors and nurses, because then you have a situation whereby you still don't have facilities well equipped and things like that. Food. We've talked about food security, in every way. But that's what we expect. But what are we likely to see? We are likely to see more money going to preparation for elections. To IEBC, they have already complained that they don't have enough money to be able to register voters.
What's wrong with that?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but at a time when you are with the boss here the other day, one of the commissioners last week, when people are not too sure they want to register, so why should we push more money to force them or to convince them?
To facilitate their registration.
And is it an unseen event?
It's not an unseen event.
Like I was about to ask, all those examples that you've given, Dr. Rugo,
yeah,
none of them is an emergency per se.
Precisely.
The issue of, for example, saying let's vaccinate more people, we knew that we needed to vaccinate people, and that should have been in the budget. What supplementary, like you're saying, is reorganizing because of emerging issues. Nothing here is food and drought. You could say now that is emerging because now you can clearly see, okay, even the December rains have failed us.
Even though it was predicted.
But now we can see the gravity of it. You can say, okay, that it's a moving target. You can dedicate more resources into it. IEBC and an election, we knew there was going to be
They were going to be all that.
CBC,
now
UHC.
all of them are not an emergency, but this is how they have become. They become an emergency, which is almost by design, and we have seen this even at the county level. Please note that the deficit we talk about and the revenue targets. So you have a deficit of, you have a deficit of, say, I don't want to use billions. You have a deficit of 20 shillings. So what we have seen sometimes is you say, okay, fine, we can only collect 80 shillings, but we still need 20 shillings to be able to achieve our 100 target, to be able to incur our expenditure. Let's raise our revenue target to 90 shillings. You know very well the 10 shillings you cannot raise.
It's not coming.
This is practical. This is what has been happening.
Yeah.
So you find that the revenue projections give you a false picture of the true deficit. You get?
So you're hiding. You're deliberately hiding.
You are deliberately, and we have put this, and we've put this to Parliament, we've put this to National Treasury, that we don't think that some of the projections on revenue collection are realistic.
So they present the projections as a reality.
A rosy picture that tells you things are not too bad.
We can afford this.
We afford. You mean we can't afford? Who are you?
But
then along the way, for instance, we knew very well that we were going to spend about 1 trillion out of the collection of about 2 trillion in this financial year. Now, if you know you're going to collect about, you're going to pay at least 1 trillion will go.
You'll go into debt.
Into debt servicing, for a fact.
Yeah.
Then what you're left with is about 800,000
billion.
800 billion. If you add those two together in terms of how much you can collect revenue-wise, then you say you have about 2 trillion. But the budget is 3.2 trillion. You have 1.2 trillion
to find.
I've actually been puzzled. This one you have to explain to me because ignorance sometimes can be a terrible burden.
Though it's bliss sometimes. you have less headaches.
I would like to move as far as possible from the bliss.
Agreed.
What prevents us from budgeting with the 2 trillion?
Okay, good. What prevents us from budgeting? Sasa, every project you see in this country, I will just say it bluntly, iko na wenyewe. We have been with the Parliamentary Budget Committee and asked them, why can't you suspend? Why can't you hold some of these projects for a later time? It is good we open the country to be usable and passable, but must we do all the roads at the same time?
All at once.
All at once? What's the rush to make sure we do? Must we try and roll out UHC and all these things at the same time? Or can we actually focus, and that's what, all these countries that we admire, they focused on certain economic zones, built them. The Singapores, the Malaysias, they are still building even as we talk. They finish one part, and the Dubai that many of us like to travel to, they built one part. Once they are done with, and opened it up, they continue to date. They are still building.
Or at least made sure that one thing
precisely
was working,
is done, right? and done well.
So that, for example, I hear what you're saying, and maybe if we're going along the same lines here, in order to say we can actually bring down the cost, right, by focusing on a certain thing. UHC, for example, you don't need to have it running in every county with everything. For example, one of the things that I remember we spoke with one of the, I believe it was the governor of Laikipia County, and he said, if we have running water, for example, in terms of infrastructure, can we beef up infrastructure so that you have running water? One of the pegs which is absolutely necessary for a proper medical process to run.
Water.
If you have running water,
You solved half the problem.
You solved half the problem.
Yes.
For all these things that you eventually end up
Precisely.
spending
Precisely.
unneeded money
Precisely.
on. Right?
And the question we've asked, because I have been in these conversations, often we have asked, guys, why can't we
freeze some things
for some time? CBC, did we have to roll it out across the country? Nope. We could have tested it.
Pilot it.
Even in the US, in one state and another state, you have different systems of education.
Sure.
What is important is, are these children working towards common goal? You know? So this rush to roll out everything, you know, at the same time, and then secondly, it is clear also that even the rollout is at inflated prices. So you're trying to do everything, and at the same time you're doing it at inflated prices. Because let me ask you. So by June this year, we will have borrowed over 9 trillion. We'll have borrowed 8.8 trillion of the ceiling of. So this is official data from the Parliamentary Budget Office in a report they released a while back. 8.8 trillion.
We have borrowed.
This is equivalent that you basically have added 88 shillings to your 100 bob. Now, if you add 88 shillings, or your monthly, let me bring it down. So your monthly income is 100 bob. Then you meet somebody along the way, and he gives you or she gives you 88 shillings. What has happened is basically you have almost doubled your income for that month.
Yeah.
Two things are possible. One is either you're going to do something great that you will always remember, or you're going to spoil yourself in a way that you will again not be forgotten.
Or in a way that you will want to forget.
Yes, in a way that you will want to forget. So when you put 8.8 trillion in our economy of about 10 trillion GDP, which is the total wealth of, we should be seeing changes everywhere.
We should see expressways, 10 of them in the country. No,
We are
10.
seeing them.
No, 10.
Are you saying you can't see that?
We
You
should
can't
be
see
seeing
them.
10 of them.
At what cost?
We should have done
No, I mean, Eric,
And that's where that's where I
trillion
want to
worth.
agree. I want to agree on something and also disagree on something else.
Yeah.
The issue of inflated projects, that we have the projects at inflated costs, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But the pressure also to keep these projects, all of them running at the same time, is actually political pressure, not by the politicians, but by the citizens.
It's a combined thing.
Because the people will keep asking, Uhuru hata kujenga, Uhuru alianza, Uhuru did not even do health. What did Uhuru do? If we come and say at you, Uhuru did, he put in progress, and we are heading towards
but Eric, and this
food
has
security.
In truth, is that this is a political hype that has been created, and everything is being done in the name of wananchi. We've at the International Budget Partnership, we've been supporting something we call budget dialogues, public deliberation dialogues. We call them budget cafes, simple name. What we found in those conversations is that wananchi are willing to trade off some things, because if they can be able to be assured that we will do this to completion. I'll give you an example. Water projects are a common challenge across board. And the reason why water projects are a challenge is because the stages that you have to go through before you get water, first of all, you have to do a feasibility study in many places. Now, Baringo is a unique place because in the lower sides of Baringo, Marigat, you have an area, huge sparse area, where you are between Lake Bogoria, a salty water lake, and Lake Baringo, a freshwater lake. Now, the feasibility studies have to be very carefully designed. But then what would happen, people go to these barazas, and every village wants a borehole in their area. Then there's 10 million shillings. So what do the people say? Because we don't want to be taken to court, let's allocate to each of them 500,000, sorry.
Yep.
Now, 500,000 is not even enough for a feasibility study. So what happens when the year is ending? They have all this money because nothing could be done in any of the boreholes. It's rolled over to the following. So what did they decide to do? They decided, fine, can we do a cost reference? Can we come up, you government officials, help us appreciate what is the total cost of getting this borehole done? So that when we go to public participation, these are the numbers we are working with. Now, and you find that people are willing to say, okay, fine, kama hivyo ndio iko, si basi tuanze na ule mradi. That one is more central. It will help more people. We'll still travel a bit, but let's get it done. Because we don't have these deliberations. We don't allow for space to converse. You know, we just come and say, oh, there is political pressure. Have we had a national dialogue? You know, I was challenging an education officer the other day. Why didn't we have a parents, a teachers, even a students dialogue on CBC?
Right.
For instance, you know, oh no, we consulted a couple of professors.
Direct power.
Because everybody appreciates, even at the household level, I have to sometimes sit with my children and tell them it's desirable to have a holiday of 2 weeks, but you can only afford so much. You know, it's desirable to do this, but you can only afford so much. That deliberation, I think, Eric, is going to be critical moving. And that's the reason why we establish institutions of representation.
You know, when you're talking about the issue of the boreholes, it's a unique situation in Baringo, but it is good for study and for reference.
Correct.
Because people talk of boreholes as though they're the begin and end all, which provides a lasting solution. They are not.
No. And maintenance costs too.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Because obviously it's going to wind us up very soon. The
fact,
question, I have a question.
Dive right in.
Question. You have told us the deficit in the budget is being driven by interest, projects zina wenyewe and inflated prices. But I want to ask the second question that we were to address today, if we have enough time, the debt ceiling. Is this an issue of concern that we move to the debt anchor? Will it help us? Are we indifferent? Or is it a problem?
The problem of debt in this country, and I think all of us appreciate, it's not a technical problem of being able to borrow or not being able to borrow, or being able to pay and not being able to pay. That's a secondary problem. The bigger problem is the kind of expenditure, the kind of expenditures we are incurring. It's a governance problem. Now, why I put it that way is because we have had, in the last 10 years, almost every year, we have had the deficit going up when revenues are not performing. Technically, you would argue that you expect revenues. If the revenues are not going up, you would expect in the course of the year during the supplementary budgets, in 1 year we had actually the deficit going up as much as 57%, which basically means you started with a deficit of 700 billion, you ended up with a deficit of 900 billion. And therefore, debt ceiling, even if today we agreed that the debt ceiling for this country is 15 trillion, in a couple of years we will be surpassing it. Because you see, this is money that is not necessarily, the kind of borrowing is not necessarily being primarily driven by what we intend to do.
Or even what we need.
Or what we need. It's driven by the fact that, you know, there are, and we can go into a lot of analysis, who lends this money, who are involved in the borrowing of the same, what are the kind of interests in there. But even if we were to put that aside, unless there is a clarity of what we are spending on, and that's why we've put a lot of this burden on parliamentarians. We have asked them, why don't you cut the deficit? Because when you cut the deficit, we had proposed a 50% cut in deficit. What you cut the deficit is basically when you go home and say, guys, I thought we will get 5,000 shillings for our visit up country. We only have 3,000 shillings. We are going to live with it because we are not going to walk up country. So we are going to either do less shopping or we are going to use public transport. We will not drive or whatever you decide on that. That leadership, that decision making is the solution. You know, we can change it to all manner of anchors, but unless the governance aspects of it, unless the rule of law side of it, unless common sense in leadership, you know, as Kipngetich used to call it, is what we are applying. And we are clear that we can face some of these things so that we are not trying to do everything now and here. Because what will happen is that even that legacy that is being sought will end up not being a legacy. Because then you leave all these things
on
hanging.
average.
Yeah.
What's the interest rate we pay on these debts?
So for the locally ones, we pay in the average of about 12-13%. Because those ones are short term. They are short term and
commercial.
They are commercial. They're in common. They're in Kenya.
In Kenya shillings.
In Kenya shillings. The ones that are abroad, because they are longer, we pay less. It's about 8% or thereabout. But because they are in foreign currency, when finally you work out the net present value, because of the shilling, depending on the fluctuation of the shilling, you end up paying much more.
You know why I'm asking this is, I'm actually getting the choice of the debts we choose to incur.
Yes.
I look at the debt that JICA and the percentage that they would charge in terms of interest.
Yes.
0.2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, so that's a question.
What's
What makes us decide on taking these
Yes.
expensive loans when there are loans that are cheaper?
When there are other
There
available.
are loans that are cheaper. First I will say interests, but after saying interest, we are now based as a middle income country, and there are loans we don't access.
Now we no longer qualify
We
for
no
some
longer
of those.
qualify for some of those.
You know,
We need to close the conversation.
This is a discussion for another day.
Yes,
Yes.
we
Jamaliza,
we
we just started.
definitely will make it. But let me just say this as we come to a close. As a country, we owe it to ourselves to be able to be very firm and deliberate on the kind of development we want to achieve for our people. We now must stop mortar and brick kind of focus and move to services. Move to the quality of education, move to the quality of healthcare, move to the quality of different services, financial, technical, and otherwise. And let's keep the conversation. And I hope that becomes the discussion even as we go to elections.
That's a very good one. Asante sana. On a very good note to end this conversation this morning, Dr. Abraham Rugo is the country manager at the International Budget Partnerships. We have been having this conversation about debt management, budget management, and the supplementary budget. Keep it right here for more. In the next hour, we have journalist Patrick Gallara. It's now 8 a.m.
Oh, boy.
Spice up your life.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Muthui, Dennis Osseto. Kenyans now have to wait a little longer before the Supreme Court delivers its judgment on the Constitutional Amendment Bill. The hearing of the appeal was concluded yesterday, with the complainants, the government and the REBC urging the court to take a different course and overturn the decision of the High Court and the Court of Appeal. State attorneys led by Ken Ogeto, George Oraro and Paul Nyamuri emphasized the need for the judiciary to refrain from interfering with the constitutional process and called on Kenyans to be allowed to decide for themselves. Regarding constituencies, lawyer Kamau Karori also emphasized that it was a political process that should have been allowed to continue, but a strong opposition mounted by civil society advocates argued before the court that the constitution specifies how to create new parliamentary constituencies. The issue of Kenyans' involvement in the constitutional reform process was also highlighted by lawyers from the civil society organizations who opposed the appeal.
The power of making the Constitution is primordial and is vested on the people and cannot be restricted or regulated either by law or by a court.
The main issues raised in the three-day process were regarding the basic structure of the Constitution.
Let us look at the manner in which this bill was originated. It was the position of Senior Counsel Kirago that the origin is hazy. Where did the people come in to prescribe the exact number, that is 70 constituencies? Was the poor peasant, the woman in the village in Yimbo Senge, consulted in terms of whether she wants a constituency?
Appellants in the case raised an issue with the judgment that the president could be sued in his personal capacity and whether he can initiate a referendum process. Attorney General Hamino insisted that politicians should not be allowed to change the constitution.
My lady, what you have to do when you are making any decision, you must exercise restraint. You cannot just go out and allow politicians to say they want to amend this constitution at all. First, to make it was a big job, was a very difficult job. Now it's better that we keep it as it is. There are some individuals who have come up with a bill. They suggest that we should have a president and deputy president and then prime minister and several other positions. These are intended to create jobs for people whom you can actually call tribal leaders.
Now, the Senate Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs today concludes a public consultation session on the political parties law amendment bill. Those appearing before the committee are IEBC, the Registrar of Political Parties, the Judiciary Electoral Committee, the Political Parties Disputes Resolution Committee, the Office of the Attorney General, various organizations including the National Commission for the Protection of Human Rights, Law Society of Kenya, National Gender Equality Committee, among others. In yesterday's sessions, the issues on the formation of the coalition party and the plan to distribute the money to political parties were raised, with some stakeholders demanding that the elements be amended. Those seeking reforms in these areas are the Council of Governors and the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. The move could jeopardize the plan to form a coalition party as championed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga through the Azimio la Umoja movement. However, court wants the Senate to pass the bill as is. The Senate is expected to convene a special session on the 25th of this month to discuss the bill, which has already been passed by the National Assembly. According to the law, if the Senate approves it the way it is, then it will be submitted to President Uhuru Kenyatta to be signed into law. But if it is amended, then it will be returned to the National Assembly, where it will be debated again. Now, insecurity being witnessed in Kerio Valley may affect voter registration in the area. According to Elgeyo Marakwet election manager John Cox, the turnout is still low, with IEBC acknowledging the challenge of registering voters in insecure areas. However, security officials are expected to be involved so that the targeted individuals are registered as voters ahead of the August 9th general elections. This counts as 1,092 people were by yesterday registered in the entire county after 5 days of registration exercise. Now, National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui has dispelled assertions made by rival politicians purporting that the Mount Kenya region can only produce running mate at the August general elections. In a perceived toned-down attack on Deputy President William Ruto, Muthui, who has declared his intention to vie for the presidency on a Democratic Party ticket, labelled the allegations as contemptuous given Mount Kenya's track record of producing 3 of the country's past and current presidents.
You can't sit out there and come around here, say you are looking for a running mate. And even then, you're just hovering around there. You're not even consulting the local leadership or even the people here. You're just saying that you're looking for a running mate. I don't know the method you want to use. Whether you want them to do some catwalk so as to see how they do their bit. It's actually a bit of looking down upon people.
Muthui also confidently retreated that the region has a number of qualified leaders. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
.5 Spice FM.
Inbound is where you find the most traffic this morning, and we're looking at Mombasa Road inbound, all the way from the Weybridge, Sabaki towards the SGR, and then out all of the little roundabouts we see with all the many diversions causing a lot of traffic, then going towards North Airport Road and then out onto Outer Ring. That's an issue this morning. We're also looking at traffic on Langata Road today. Southern Bypass probably is your best bet. Whole of industrial area is packed. Langata Road, crazy packed. So there's an option to use Raila Odinga Way. No, I lied. Don't use it. If you can avoid it, do. There's a lot of traffic then heading towards Gong Road area. And Gong Road itself, some going then towards Community, Uhuru Highway in and outbound, Jogo Road, craziness going into the city. The Thika Super Highway, my goodness, that is a mess as well. Limuru Road, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th Parklands Avenue. All that drama this morning. It is 8 o'clock hour on a Friday morning. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. But for now, anything jump out at you, let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
8
day.
minutes after 8. Good morning. Thank you very much for keeping it locked on SpiceFM. From wherever you are around the country, whether it's Nairobi, Mombasa, Nyeri, Nakuru, Eldoret, Kisumu, or Malindi, or throughout the world on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, and Facebook, and those who are now joining us on KTN Home, where we are live until the top of the hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, C.T. Muga. Our guest host today is Wanjiru Gikonyo of the Institute for Social Accountability. We have another guest in the studio. We'll be introducing him shortly. But first, the day's proverb. C.T. Muga.
Shimo la ulimi, mkono haufutiki.
Again.
Shimo la ulimi, mkono haufutiki.
Shimo la ulimi, mkono haufutiki.
Mm-hmm. And it helps to shake your head when you're mentioning mkono. And then when you say haufutiki, shake it a little more vigorously.
In English, direct translation.
Well, a hole created by your tongue cannot be erased by the hand.
I had promised to give an example.
Yes.
But I think Dr. Rugo did that.
Did he?
He did.
No,
He
you
said-
need to keep your promises. What
You
I don't understand.
This is
what we are doing
January.
here.
That
This
was
is-
his example.
This is January.
No, and I haven't done homework.
You will not.
This is January.
That was his example.
You
Yours
want
now.
your example.
Yes.
For instance, government has said, but we've talked
No,
enough
just
about
carry on.
government.
No, we haven't. You
You
never
give
talked
example.
enough about
Has
government.
said they are delivering tuliambiwa ni nini? Big Four, CBC, SGR, Nairobi Expressway, all promises to the people.
Hiyo ni ulimi.
Ulimi. Then mkono inatafuta hela. It has gone into our pockets. It has turned us upside down and bado.
Okay, take back.
No, this is my
That example. Is that an example of this proverb?
Yeah, the point is it's only going to get worse.
Can we get back to factory settings and refer to what you said earlier on when I mentioned the proverb?
Whether this explanation is actually for this.
Is it for this proverb or is it for another proverb?
It is. You can't decide just because I'm, bringing out the worst example that it's not valid.
No,
it might be our reality. It's
is our
just that we
reality.
have this amnesia or a need for happy stories.
It's a lovely example. But I am merely going by the lovely example you set earlier on.
Yes.
Which proverb are you interpreting?
Let me let you have
There
that
must
one.
be a proverb that goes with that example.
I must do my homework. I must do my homework a bit better.
Okay.
And I must keep my promises. So
Let's welcome our
Next
guest
hour.
for this hour. And this is journalist Patrick Gallara. He is a journalist, he's a cartoonist, he's a columnist. He runs The Elephant, which is a publication that gets in various thought leaders in various areas. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you in the show and on the hot seat. Again, I think we had you, the last we had you was...
It's been a while.
2 years ago.
Yeah, it has been a while since I was
pre-COVID.
here. Yeah.
He
For
went
sure, it was
international.
pre-COVID, yeah.
He went international. Those guys, I don't do local radio.
No. Big stories only.
Local radio just don't call me. They don't invite me to come on.
Welcome to the show.
So,
It's
thanks
good
to
to
be
have
here. Great to be here.
We want to have this conversation based off of what you have written about before, what you've tweeted before, what we have seen in the public domain, people having, these debates. We have increasingly seen serving and retired military officers joining civilian ranks in the public service. Mm-hmm. Yesterday we hosted one here. She's a serving colonel. This is Colonel Alice Mate. She's the director of the Asset Recovery Agency, she came and explained to us very well what the ARA does and the mandate and the job that they're doing. We know, of course, starting from the highest, we have a Lieutenant General who is running, he's the de facto governor of Nairobi.
Right.
And this is General Badi. We have a brigadier who is running the Kenya Meat Commission, and this was through the order of the president to transfer the functions to the Defense Ministry. And then we have others who are still serving. We have, for example, a retired officer who's head Director General of the Kenya Wildlife Service. We have a retired general who's a Principal Secretary for Energy. We have a retired colonel who's a government spokesperson. We have others, various chairmen, retired general who's a chairman of the NSSF,
Right.
a retired general who's a chairman of Kenya Ports, and so on and so forth. What is and someone else?
No, just think of the foreign representatives, our ambassadors.
And our ambassadors as well. Some retired military officers who are serving in Kenya's foreign missions abroad. Good thing, bad thing?
Well, for me, it's quite troubling, and I think especially you've got serving officers in civilian roles. I think also, it is concerning when you have retired ones as well, but not so much as in my view, as serving officers. I think if you look at our constitution, it's pretty clear about the role of the military, and even when it's to help civilian authorities, it's really only in emergency situations. It's not really, shouldn't be a routine thing that we deploy military guys internally. And I think Nanjala Nyabola put it pretty well when she said that if you start telling the military that they are better at running the country, they might actually believe you. And then you would find yourself in real problems. They might start thinking, well, we do a better job of running the police. They say so. We do a better job of running butcheries, of running ministries. Why don't we just take over? And I think this is the problem. This is where we start setting it up. And the second thing for me is also Kenya has this kind of idea of, we follow the American example of kind of venerating the military, where we try and project this image of them as incorruptible, as disciplined, etc., people who follow the rules. But we have seen, throughout that they are no different from other agencies. We saw what happened at Westgate, where they looted the mall in full view, of the entire country. We saw their incompetence in places like Garissa. We have seen what they're doing in Somalia, where they are basically smuggling charcoal and sugar. These are not any different from the rest of our institutions. So the idea that giving it to the military then or they're more likely to run it better, for me, I'd really question that. And I think it's about time we got back or had a much clearer understanding that the military is part of this society. It has a specific role that we have set out for it in the Constitution, and we should stick by it. Starting to confuse things, starting to bring them into areas where they shouldn't be, I think is just storing up trouble for the future.
So there are instances where even the law allows for the military to come in and assist in civilian roles.
Yes.
All right? And those instances are not written in the Constitution or in the law as emergency.
It does say emergencies, actually, to support or assist civilian authorities in times of emergencies. That's actually in the Constitution. This routine deployment is not something that is authorized by our Constitution. And even when it comes to, for example, areas where we think that they have expertise in protecting, so for example, in providing security, where we have things, they are supposed to be authorized by Parliament to do that. We never hear of them coming back and giving a report to Parliament. We're never told, and it's always assumed as if they're deployed once and it's for all time, or they're authorized once and it's for all time, which I think, again, goes contrary to the intention of the Constitution. This should be extraordinary measures. But the Kenyatta regime has basically made it a normal thing to deploy the military internally.
What do you think the rationale is behind these appointments? What do you think? I mean, just from where you are and what you've been able to see, what do you think is playing in the background when these appointments are made? Because, I mean, as Eric has done the list, we are looking across board, whether it is, in what would be private sector, county government, recovery agency. What do you think is running in the periphery of the mind?
Well, I think there are two things for me. First, it's rewarding loyalty, and we've had for a long time, actually, even in terms of Kenyatta's dad and during Moi's time, where in essence, military guys were bribed not to get involved in politics, not to get involved in governance. So they were either allowed to become very wealthy, and stuff. So I think they are being given these jobs as a way to keep them silent, But secondly, and more disturbing for me, is I think there is it seems to me that Kenyatta himself seems to look up to the military, seems to be guided or to prefer to be guided by them. We've seen the photos where he appears in his sort of fatigues and stuff, smiling like a young boy who's been given new toys, to play with.
Oh, come on.
It is. They have been there, especially the first ones that came out. I was quite surprised. And I think
You're
for
surprised
me,
that the president is smiling?
Well, no, the way he was and the way he was behaving with the whatever, what's that thing, the
ceremonial sword,
the walking stick thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that he looked, the images that were published, he looked like a guy who'd been given.
Now that is the heart of the matter. The images
fresh
that
toys.
were
Anyway,
published.
we weren't there. We
interpretation
we saw. Yes, that's my interpretation.
interpretation.
And my thing is this. That these ideas, this looking up to the military, and I think even in the way
how exactly does he look up to the military?
For me, it looks to me, and it seems to me, and again, this is all my interpretation, from what I've seen, is he seems to prefer to be seen as part of them.
But he is.
No, he's not. Actually, he is not.
Actually,
the designation of Commander-in-Chief is a civilian designation. You should never think that guy there is going in as a military officer.
But
the subordination of the military to the civilians, that is a core thing in our constitution. It does not turn civilian rulers into military ones. Okay. And it is an actual, I think, a very dangerous position to take, to imagine that Kenyatta has been converted into a five-star general.
Again, that's your
never
interpretation.
is.
Again, that's your interpretation.
As Commander-in-Chief, he's the head of state. Okay.
Yes, he's still a civilian.
Yes, he's a civilian.
A civilian.
Never a military.
The contention here is whether there is whether he's part of or not, and I think those are just semantics. As head of state, he's part of every aspect of the society.
No. As head of state, he has particular functions that he fulfills.
Yes.
He's leading the military, or he's being able to give orders to the military does not convert him into a military man, just as our Minister of Defense is not a military person.
Neither does him wear a military uniform.
I like what Gallara is saying, because what he's talking about is the designation and delegation of state power, which is actually what's being debated in the Supreme Court in the BBI case. And speaking on this thing of the garb and in his submissions, Nelson Harvey talked about the African ruler. The African ruler, and maybe it's a part of our African culture that we have to confront, must be seen to exhibit that splendor and that power. That is part of our thinking. Yes. But the Constitution expects, actually, the president is there based on delegated authority, delegated from the people, expects servant leadership, Chapter 6, expects Article 6.2, consultative government. And what has happened is the president is uncomfortable. And from the very outset, the president spoke very clearly that this constitution makes Kenya ungovernable because he couldn't understand how his edicts could then be challenged by court or, he could be checked. So we have a president actually who is uncomfortable with a constitutional, deliberative, consultative democracy. And that is why you see...
How does that affect
How does that tie
with these
a
appointments?
president appearing at a military function or a state function wearing military regalia?
No, we are not saying he cannot
Nothing
wear...
bars him
We
from doing
cannot
that.
say nothing... We are not saying he cannot wear the regalia. That was a comment about the exhibition of authority.
No, but
his action,
directly
the point Gallara was saying
yes,
is
he's saying it connects to the fact that
constitutionally we have a separation of powers.
Yes, let's clarify
we have a separation of powers. Is the president respecting the separation of powers?
Let him clarify what he said.
Yes.
Gallara said, you can see that he wants to be part of them. Because the question I asked that elicited that answer was, what is the rationale behind these appointments? What do you think is happening? What informs these appointments?
And I said he
looks up to them and he wants to be part of them. In the clothing that he wears, it seems as though he wants to be part of them.
One of the statements, but he's also said that it's a very dangerous precedent to put military leaders acting military leaders in civilian positions. And also he talked about...
Why is it a dangerous precedent?
Well, look at what's happening in Sudan. Look at what's happening in other
No,
African
no,
countries.
no.
If the military,
I am glad you have mentioned Sudan. Thank you very much.
If the military gets used to taking up
Wanjiru.
civilian roles,
Wanjiru.
he has
Omar al-Bashir was a military man. Start there.
It was a military state.
How far back
we
do
are
you
not
want
a military
to go?
state.
And are you happy with that?
We are
Is
not
that
a
something
military
you're
state.
recommending
No. This is not a discussion of happiness. I'm simply trying to explain to you that if you're talking about military in government, look at Pakistan, look at Egypt.
Are this...
And
are
look
we
at
supposed
Myanmar.
to be looking up to this?
No. Gallara, if you would just listen for a while, you would actually understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say this. There are countries in this world where the military has been an integral part of their political system.
Yes.
Okay?
In
That's
military
all
states.
I am saying. They're not military states. They are civilian states.
Turkey is not a military state.
Yes.
A militarized state? But let's look...
Actually, again, the role of the military in Kenya is defined.
Exactly.
This idea that, let's look at Sudan, let's look as if because they do it, it's fine to do it here.
Actually,
That's-
it isn't
we're saying
fine
we are
to do
not.
it. It's just that
You
that
know,
is
it-
what
that
they
it
have.
happens.
We are a democratic state.
Let me read the
governed by
Constitution.
the separation
Let me read
of
the
powers.
Constitution. Article 241 of the Constitution, establishment of the Defense Forces and the Defense Council. The defense forces are responsible for the defense and protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic. They shall assist and cooperate with other authorities in situations of emergency or disaster and report to the National Assembly whenever deployed in such circumstances, and they may be deployed to restore peace in any part of Kenya affected by unrest or instability only with the approval of the National Assembly. And then we go into the composition of the defense forces to reflect regional and ethnic diversity, and we establish the Defense Council and what the council does.
So you see the
Supports what Gallara
emergency is there. When we
Emergencies
redeploy
and
them
disasters.
routinely,
And
we are
reporting to
not
Parliament.
in accord with the Constitution. But to go back to what we were saying before, for me, we need to maintain a serious distinction between what's civilian and what is military, and between the roles of the civilian authorities and the roles of militaries, of our military. And I think when our president perambulates in his or dresses up in his military fatigues, he tends to confuse that distinctions, or he blurs that distinction. He tends to present himself, or attempts to present himself, as a military officer, which he is not. And I think it is really, really important that we push the point that, no, you are not that. We did not hire you as that. We hired you as a civilian to oversee the military, not to become part of them. And I think there is a real and abiding concern. It's been with us since the 70s. About how far the military can go. They have attempted twice to take over government here. It's not that it can't happen. They have tried it twice, and luckily failed twice.
Okay.
There are countries that have not had that that good fortune, and we've seen what's happened there. So let's learn from it, and let's be quite serious about keeping the limits, the constitutional limits that are provided for the military, and trying to enforce them rather than sort of glossing over as if these things don't endanger our republic.
But Ndu's question hasn't been answered yet.
Until now, my dear.
Can I play devil's advocate and say that in the appointment of a serving military officer to the, unfortunately, unconstitutional Nairobi Metropolitan Services, what's your interpretation of that? Did we gain? Did we lose? What are the risks?
I think we lost. And I'll say that, I'll tell you why I think we lost. I think the first thing is constitutionally we lost. And I think that, again, as I said, the distinction between civilian roles and military roles and blurring those is problematic. Secondly, it's about a central government takeover of a county government. I think that the whole idea behind devolution was that we don't end up with central government running everything, but then we open the door and say, well, they can create a metropolitan ministry when they feel that the county is not being run as how they like, and take it over, over the objections of the sitting governor, who's the one we have elected to run it. I think that's problematic. I think the third thing, which is, and lots of people will be saying, well, but they did do particular things. They did clean up Nairobi. They did build walkways. They did do things that the civilian authorities weren't doing. Then I would ask, how far do you want to take that argument? At what point can't they say, well, we think we can do a better job than Kenyatta, so let's take over? So it's really important. That's the door you are opening. It is
one officer who is currently serving in the military, who came in as the Director General of the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. It is not the military that is running the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. At what point do you
distinguish?
Did he delegate?
How do you distinguish it?
What are his reporting mandates? Because that's a question I was
asking. The reporting mandate is directly to the president.
Yeah, to the president. What's his accountability to the people?
It's there.
As a military officer.
The argument about accountability to the people is something that we can have, whether the NMS is accountable to the people of Nairobi or not. But the structure, whether it was General Badi or retired General Badi or Wanjiru Gikonyo in the NMS, the reporting structure is clear, is articulated. Right, in the presidential directive.
So if I was to petition
of who
the
NMS,
county, if I was to petition the National Assembly on a point of misconduct of the director of the NMS, because that's a power given under the Constitution.
Yes.
Who are the authorities? Under whose authority does he lie?
The office of the president. It's clear. The NMS is under the presidency.
And where is the military in this scenario? What are the disciplinary proceedings that he is subject to?
Let's talk about those after the break. It's 9:30, and this 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Our guest in the studio is Patrick Gallara, journalist. Our guest host is Wanjiru Gikonyo. We are talking about military, both serving and retired military officers, taking up civilian roles in the public service. Good thing or bad thing? Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to SpiceFM.
Owning a home is a dream for most Kenyans. In partnership with Mombasa Rolling Mills, this Saturday, I, Olivia Otieno, host experts that will get you that much closer to realizing your dream of owning a home. Join me on 00 Direct from 10 a.m. on 94.4 Spice FM. Live stream on standardmedia.co.ke. MRM, 60 years of quality building solutions. Ukiweka, umeweka.
If I'm found guilty, there is no problem. I'm willing to serve. I have no problem. Jails are meant for human beings.
They say a society gets the leadership it deserves. If you have a corrupt, crooked and rotten society like we have in Kenya, then of course they will get that kind of a leadership.
I think the president should dissolve parliament. That's the best solution at this moment in time. Dissolve parliament.
All of you go home.
Yes, we all go home.
How are we encouraging other people who might have new and creative ideas? Young people who are making money without any government help. They are just buying their own bundles, they are going on TikTok and making money. KRA is coming after them.
I've been in parliament for 15 years. We have been unable to pass the gender law. And yet no presidential candidate is talking about it now. Because we are fake. The truth is, all the men refused to vote for that law.
What did Sonko do to Pumwani Maternity Hospital?
Yeah, he
with
cleaned
his
it up.
own money.
Cleaned it with his own money. That was him as an individual.
Yeah. And I did not say he was cleaning his own money. I was saying he cleaned
Foot, mouth, foot. 18 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi, highs of 25 and lows of 15. It's sunny at 16 in Nakuru, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 16, highs of 25 and lows of 12. And it's sunny in some parts in Eldoret at 15. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 12. In Mombasa, mostly cloudy this morning at 28, highs of 32 and lows of 25. While in Malindi, it's mostly cloudy at 27. It'll go to highs of 31. It's mostly cloudy at 21 in Kisumu, highs of 28 and lows of 18. And we're looking at clouds in the sky in Kakamega as well, highs of 28 and lows of 15. It's raining in Kampala now at 18, highs of 28 and lows of 16. It's also raining in Dar es Salaam, 26 at the moment, highs of 31 and lows of 25. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions at 16 in Johannesburg, highs of 26 and lows of 12. Still foggy in Lagos at 22. That'll be today's low, going to highs of 33. 32 will be the high recorded in Kinshasa, where it's raining at 23.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
All right, let's see how things have changed. We're in traffic hour proper now. Coming off Mombasa Road is still a bit of a headache. We're looking at it going well beyond Old Mombasa Road. Sabaki out towards the SGR. Very slow movement. In and outbound traffic for some reason at Imara. Not quite sure what that outbound traffic is. The construction, yes, that will contribute to it. Southern Bypass, a little bit of a hiccup right there on Mombasa Road. We're also looking at Langata Road, which has also built up some. Jugo Road, in and outbound traffic. All the way to the roundabout at the City Stadium. Coming out of Westlands, that whole area. Use the Red Hill Link Road. Save yourself the headache, at least for now, if you can get out. Okay, let's talk. What do you see? Where are you? We'll take a look at what's happening in other parts of the country this Friday in a bit. Talk to us. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
24 minutes to 9. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM, on KTN Home, and online. Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, CT Muga, Wanjiru Gikonyo, and Patrick Gallara. We are talking about military officers taking up civilian roles. So you're asking, for example, with specific example of NMS, the reporting roles and all.
I wanted to move from reporting roles to ask a related question. Or put forward a hypothesis that had the government, national government, not taken over Nairobi County, had it not appointed a general, because usually a director anyway would be accountable to the public service.
Yep.
In this case, the general is accountable to the president. So there's a question around that. But had it not done that, would we then be benefiting from the Nairobi Expressway and all that it pertains? So from a development point of view, is this a good thing, a bad thing, or is it just a fact? Because I put it to you...
The expressway is in Class A of roads, which are national roads, trunk roads, and all that.
Physical planning is a mandate of the county government. And that function was taken over by NMS. The expressway cannot be built
without the NMS.
without the approval of either the Nairobi County or in this case NMS, and hence what we are seeing in Nakuru. So what I'm putting to you is maybe it's beneficial. Maybe we need the expressway. Maybe we need to remove residents who sit in the way of development. Maybe we need to do that.
Let me
and
ask
maybe
the
we
question.
needed this whole process.
Do we
maybe
have
it's a
examples
plus.
of countries where something similar to what we see in Kenya has happened, where you've had a president appointing military officers and that has gone south?
Or has even gone north?
South is usually considered to be the terrible bit. Yes, so do we have examples of countries? The examples we have is of the military taking over. So they are in charge. But do we have examples? The reason why I'm asking this question is this. The point that you and Patrick are pushing so energetically makes sense. And it makes sense because we have examples on this continent where the military took power and simply never left. What they then did, they morphed and pretended to be civilians, or they got into civilian life and they were considered civilians, but they were military people. Now the question you want to ask is, when they were then running the governments into which they had been elected, were they running it as military officers or as civilians?
Or as a democracy?
Yes. How different is the running of the government from civilians who'd never been in the army running it?
And when you're doing development projects, like we are seeing, is it different when you have this military leader responsible from a point of view of the direct constituent power of the people? Are they more likely to be held back and say, hey, we need to negotiate?
All right. Let me come to Kenya, since I'm hypothesizing on the continent.
Just answer your question.
Yes.
I suppose one could look at places like Uganda, where you do have the military running quite a lot of things. The argument there might be that, well, look, Museveni came in as a military commander, but he's run for elections. So one could say he is
he's a civilian
president. But they have military running things. Lots of staff being appointed to head departments, etc.
Yep.
I don't think it has particularly worked well for them, and I think the fact that you see it is so easy to clamp down on opposition to the government, etc., has a lot to do with the fact that the military essentially still holds the reins of power, even under the guise of being appointed by a civilian president. I think we really have to be careful about where these when military guys are taken out of what are specifically military roles, the roles we train them to do, to start running our countries. For me, it is a big problem. I think you might not, I suppose one could argue that, well, it's one guy being taken here, it's another guy being taken there, but you are opening doors that you might not necessarily be able to close.
Okay.
I think we also create this military thing to be this guy, this genie that must be in a bottle. Because if it comes out of the bottle, then it will definitely is going to be rogue. So,
or is likely to.
Gallara, it's definitely going to be.
I think the first...
But it's a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, it is dangerous. Number one.
Only time will tell, Eric.
Exactly.
History,
is there anything wrong with experimenting both ways?
History tells us we should be concerned. But in our case, only time will tell. That's a very dangerous place.
Do we have countries where something similar to what we're seeing in Kenya has occurred? And the doomsday prediction that Patrick here is giving has actually happened. Pushing. Have we seen it happen?
He's giving us an example of Uganda, neighboring Uganda, where the same thing, a civilian president, a civilian elected president.
Former military.
Actually, no.
Former military, fine.
Actually,
but
no.
He
was not former military. This man was a civilian who led a guerrilla war. So if you want to call him a military person, the people you're talking about are career military people.
Well, actually,
so we have military people in government in Uganda. Has it gone south? Has it not? And what stops us from even saying, let's experiment
Well, two things stop
Let's-
us. I think the first is the Constitution stops us. So you want to change the Constitution, let's have a discussion about changing it. And the things we need to go through. The second thing that stops us is history and what we have seen militaries do, on our continent. And the thing is, if your experiment goes south, the cost of that is massive.
I'd like to question that.
And you've got to be careful.
I want to question that.
Is
that
this an experiment?
The history.
Is it an
the history
experiment?
that you're
He's
saying.
saying, can we experiment with it?
The
That's
history
what I was
that you're saying.
responding
What
to.
history are you referring to? Where the military was first appointed into executive roles in government and then they took over government. What example?
No,
is this?
I'm saying that the history,
we don't have a
of
history of
military, military
Overthrowing
running
a civilian government.
Yeah,
but to
exactly.
be fair,
and
but-
my point
Across
is
the globe.
this: is you are opening a door, to getting there, and that's my thing.
I think the only thing we can do at this point is one, look at the law, and I think that
We
we've
agree
canvassed
on
that
that.
quite well.
Yep.
That constitutionally there are problems here. Maybe even administratively, when you look at the lines of reporting, there may be a problem. Public service vis-a-vis a military officer, that will be a challenge. But now when you get into the realm of looking at the risks, I think all we can do here is hypothesize. We may become the example of where
We
a
can be the-
democratic government of its own volition brings in the military
Works with
into
the military.
key installations.
As citizens of that
What
republic.
do you
And-
think
And
the
they work.
rationale was behind hiring these people or appointing them into these positions? Do you think it was a moment, okay, I have some people who are sitting in military and they've done nothing, let me put them into these positions? I'm going back to that.
I like that
Why
question.
do you think it was done and continues to be done?
How would
in
you
that
answer
I
that
like
question?
that
Ndu?
question.
How would you answer that question? What do you think?
That perhaps there is reasoning behind this. That okay, here are things that I need to be done, that we as a country need to be done in a certain manner. And here is somebody who has been able to work in this sector with a particular track record. How about we see if this can work? And then in a short time, look at the turnover that you've seen. Look at Kenya Meat Commission, for example, and the statistics that we've been given in the short time. Is it possible, even with the other side of it, is it possible to look on this other side and say, hold on, it's possible that this could actually work? And that's why I'm asking the rationale. Must the rationale, Patrick, only come from a negative stance or a position
for
of
this,
fear?
from where we stand, it of necessity has to come from a negative one, because from ab initio it is an illegal thing they are doing. It is an unconstitutional thing they are doing. Now we can ask, why do we have this bar in the Constitution? Because if they wanted, the people who framed the Constitution could have said, well, actually, it doesn't have to be a situation of emergency.
Actually,
they didn't do
the
that.
situations you refer to were all emergencies.
Well, not really.
They were all emergencies. Kenya Meat Commission had gone beyond collapse. It was in a completely different existential state.
I think we are getting
Nairobi County was going not just south,
was a
south,
disaster.
south, south.
And
Now,
that was
the reason why I'm bringing this in, because when do you think the military should come in? We had a situation where the Nanyuki Nairobi railway line was being built, military involved, just so that you understand.
You know
They supported
something?
blah,
Please give us the full narrative, City. Kenya Meat Commission, the military steps in.
That is the only place where you can say the military were told to take over.
Yes, take over.
These are the instances.
Hold on. The full story is this. The military owes Kenya Meat Commission 7 billion in liabilities. How is any institution going to run when it's not paid? So the full story is it justified to say, well, we're not going to pay you what we owe you so you can run? And there could be a problem. Hold on. And there could be a problem
Wanjiru,
because
that's part of the
no.
story and one side
Excuse
of
me.
the
Let me
story.
finish. Let me finish because and there could be problems in the way the parastatal is run because we have a problem with parastatals, and we were talking about this earlier about interests. So if there are interests, you deal with the interests. You don't bring in the military. But in this case, KMC, as you say, they've turned it around. Well, there's an issue of what was a
Is
conflict
it what
of
we
interest.
say or is it the reality?
Nairobi Metropolitan Service. Yes, we got the wrong governor.
There's nothing wrong with him. It's just that he couldn't manage
Very
what he
poor
had been
leadership.
given.
No, but in the first instance, if you remember the point I made, the failure to implement Chapter 6 has allowed candidates who should not be on that ballot.
Wanjiru, if
Should
you're talking
not
about
be-
chapter
should
6,
not even be on
should
the
we talk
ballot
about the
to
implementation
ascend
of
to
chapter
power.
6, or should we talk
So-
about the watering down of chapter 6?
So what I am saying, by
And how
the,
does
the, the,
the
the,
military
the, the
solve
solution to failure to implement the constitution is not to hand over positions to the military. So I take it
Yes.
to you, the reason why these military leaders are being appointed is a failure by the president to run the civil service. So the failure, by the way, is the president's leadership style.
You know,
and
this
capacity.
idea, I think one of the things, just to respond a bit to what
President
Ndu had
Mwai
said,
Kibaki took a military officer, a serving military officer, and brought him to the police.
Was that a good thing?
Was it a good thing? How did it work?
Was it a
How did it
failure?
work?
Was it a failure
Yes.
by
Yes,
President
it was.
Kibaki
It is.
to
It was
run
an
the civil
abject
service?
failure.
The police
It was
are
an
not-
abject failure.
Let me ask you,
are not-
are the police part of the disciplined forces?
The police are not part of our military.
Defense
That's
forces.
where
No,
you're headed.
You see,
They're not part of
They're
our
not.
defense forces.
They're not part
I
of our
understand
defense
full
forces.
well, but are you telling me that somebody cannot be seconded? We do not have the capacity
You
and the
should
rules
not.
by which...
You
No,
should
no, no.
not. Again,
And-
if
and
you
it
say
was
there
an
is,
abject
show us
failure.
where,
You know,
it is. Where
are-
are these rules that allow it?
Why
And
is it
even
that...
if,
You know.
even if we were to argue to answer the question, where have we seen it work? In the case of that appointment, it was a cautionary tale. It did not work.
Yes.
It disrupted the line of promotions and ascension and authority, so there was discontent within the police. And then the style was so abrasive, even things that were working stopped working.
And don't forget, this
Consultation
is
with
a guy
stakeholders broke
that,
down.
that is
Indicted
your interpretation
in
This
of
the
what
is
ICC
documented.
Even
for
if
killing
documented.
Kenyans. So
It's documented.
Okay. So there was an issue that we raised earlier. It's how the military can then be deployed and how it cannot. So we can say that constitutionally, if we were just to read directly with the letter of the constitution, that it appears that the military has been
the routine
involved.
deployment of military officers, I think, is contrary to the intentions of the
And that's why I want to ask, is it deployment of the military or is it seconding of an officer?
I think
Are they the same?
I think for me,
When we see Lieutenant General Badi running NMS, is it the military that has been taken to run affairs of the Nairobi City County?
I think so.
Or is it an
I
officer
think you
of the
cannot
military who's been...
distinguish.
When we see
whom does he
Alice Mate,
report?
Colonel
To whom
Alice
does
Mate,
I don't think you
report?
can
But then who
distinguish.
Does
Colonel-
he report to the public service?
But who
Colonel
reports
Alice
to
Mate,
him?
for instance, here
The
serves
lines-
in an institution that has been established by an act of parliament. Everything in the management of this is within that law. Colonel Mate's
chain of command.
the chain of command is still according to the law.
It is
So
civilian.
first of all, we're not questioning the competence of those officers.
Yes.
Let's be
So I'm
very
saying-
clear. So they
so this
could
is
be
not the
very
military.
competent. But what
The
you're
person,
saying,
Colonel Mate
it
here
is
does
the
not
military.
respond. Colonel
When
Mate
you
here
deploy
does
the
not take
military, you're
orders
deploying
from-
people, you're deploying equipment. Any of those
All
is,
those.
is
Personnel.
deploying the
Actually,
military. You
even
cannot say that officer is now not military.
No.
He is still part of the military.
even in collection of in the markets, collection of licensing fees and these cess that they charge, they were using the military. And so we had informal traders in the
Where were
market.
they doing
Where
this?
were they using the military?
They were using the military.
Where?
In Nairobi County. We were called to a meeting, by the way.
You may live here and somehow.
Yes, they
how
were-
come I miss all these things.
They were present during the enforcement. During the enforcement, they are not the ones directly engaging because it's KRA officials. But they are working with them.
Were they military,
Was it military or,
or
this?
national youth?
Yeah.
Not national youth.
And national police.
It wasn't national
It's
youth.
armed national
It
police.
was not national police.
Or is it a military officer who also has been seconded to NMS? That's what I'm talking about.
No, now we don't know the details. But the complaint that came from the traders was, we are intimidated. First of all, we are being coerced by KRA. And then we are seeing that there is military in the background. What are you saying? How are they enforcing how is NMS enforcing bylaws, basic bylaws and basic
I
revenue
think this must
laws?
have happened before I joined the media.
No, this happened during the COVID period. Immediately the takeover of functions happened. And this is
and
when...
I think we have to be careful. For me, to answer your question, I don't think you can make a distinction. I think it would be very difficult to sustain that distinction.
All right. Let me ask you, Patrick.
So when you do deploy people from the military, into these positions, you are in essence deploying the military.
Can I ask a question? How that would work? For example, NMS, right? And one of the things that they have done over the last few years is built over the last few months is built these 24 hospitals around there. One of the people behind that is Dr. Oluga, right? Going about making sure that this work is done. Their boss, as you said, military officer. Would you say that is the deployment of the military to get these things done? And these, hold on, the work that is being done in the county, in the Nairobi metropolitan region, health-wise, and this is one individual, plus all his other people under him who are working. Will you say that this is active deployment of the military to come into this area to get this work done in the health sector?
The deployment of General Badi
I'm
is
talking about
the deployment
the work.
of... No, the work, again, you're not making distinction.
I'm asking about the work that is being done.
Yes, but the work that is being done is not what we are talking about.
That's
we're talking about the deployment of a military guy.
No, you see, this is the thing.
So if you're asking, can the work be done without the military? Yes.
But it wasn't being
clearly.
done.
Now, yes. And this is the question, is the solution then to deploy? And if the solution is to deploy, are we able to do it? Do our laws allow it? And what you can't just say that because it's working out now, that yes, let's go ahead and do it and let's ignore the legalities around it, or to ignore the threats that then it still poses going forward. And that's my point, is let's be clear. When we say we are deploying the military, first, are we constitutionally allowed to do it? That's our first question. That's our first point of call. Yep. Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the Constitution is an illegal act. He shouldn't be doing it and should be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
And if he has arguments to support it,
the second thing is we should not ignore why it is we have these barriers in the Constitution. These are things that are telling us, there are dangers, there are threats. And be careful about getting sort of the lollipop of, Patrick, they built a few hospitals here and there, Patrick, and you accept it and you get used to it. And then in future, when they come on and actually start exercising these things in ways that you will find very hard to reverse.
Yeah. We need to make choices about how we do
be
development.
Careful. The third, if I may just finish, the third thing that I find for me quite problematic is this idea that if some politicians fail, then therefore the whole rubric of civilian rule is the problem. And the way we solve that is let's bring in military. This lionization of military guys, Kenyatta said it very interestingly when he was talking about Badi in government. He said, this guy, I'm bringing my military chappy basically to do things as I want them done. He doesn't like these, the mess of having to convince people, of having to talk to them, of having to actually get their consent. He'd much prefer military guy, give an order, something gets done. That's it. That is dangerous. That is problematic. That is not how democratic states should be run. And I think if we start valorizing that, we will very soon find ourselves in a situation where that we can't get back from.
3 minutes to 9, time for us to say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home. The conversations continue on SpiceFM around the country. 94.4 Nairobi, 97.7 Malindi, 87.9 Mombasa, 96.0 Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 102.5 in Kisumu.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
If I'm found guilty, there is no problem. I'm willing to serve. I have no problem. Jails are meant for human beings.
They say a society gets the leadership it deserves. If you have a corrupt, crooked and rotten society like we have in Kenya, then of course they will get that kind of a leadership.
I think the president should dissolve parliament. That's the best solution at this moment in time. dissolve Parliament.
All of you go home.
Yes, we all go home.
How are we encouraging other people who might have new and creative ideas? Young people who are making money without any government help. They are just buying their own bundles. They are going on TikTok and making money. KRA is coming after them.
I've been in Parliament for 15 years. We have been unable to pass the gender law. And yet no presidential candidate is talking about it now. Because we are fake. The truth is, all the men refuse to vote for that law.
What did Sonko do to Pumwani Maternity Hospital?
Yeah, he
with
cleaned
his
it up.
own money.
Cleaned it with his own money. That was him as an individual.
Yeah. And I did not say he was cleaning his own money. I was saying he cleaned it.
Foot, mouth. Foot, mouth. Eric.
Okay.
The Situation Room.
Coming
Kenya's
to
biggest conversation.
To the top of the hour. So, Gallara, as you conclude, you've said, let's watch out, let's hear everything. CT wanted to come in and say something about that as we wind up on this conversation. What do you feel when you see military deployment or secondment of military officers in public service?
You know, I'm an ancient creature, and my views belong to the previous century. The truth of the matter is this. It isn't one argument, it's many arguments. You cannot argue about the constitutional or the legal side of this. There's really nothing to argue about. There's clarity there. But you also can't run away from what we have seen as positive results of these very actions. And so what am I discussing? The balance. What am I discussing? Using a tool that is available to you and that can actually get the job done, as opposed to the incompetencies that we see with our politicians. So, even as we discuss the rule of law and we discuss the constitution, there is a reality that faces us. Do you sit back and watch something just spiraling downwards from bad to worse, or do you take a step that you think will actually help?
Bring something to plug it in.
Can I quickly just say, more military officers have been deployed at City Hall to take over operations in a move which raises stakes in the supremacy battle between Sonko and NMS Director, Major General
how many were deployed?
10 KDF officers.
So
that
it's not just money.
So that's the point. So when traders on the ground tell you they were intimidated,
that's
yes.
it. Thank you very much. The conversations continue to the next hour. Patrick, thank you for joining us. 9 a.m.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Spice up your life.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newsround Dennis. The Senate Committee on Justice and Legal a public consultation session on the political parties law amendment bill. Those appearing before the committee are RABC, the Registrar of Political Parties, the Judiciary Electoral Committee, the Political Parties Dispute Resolution Committee, the Office of the Attorney General, various organizations including the National Commission for the Protection of Human Rights, the Law Society of Kenya, National Gender Equality Commission, among others. In yesterday's sessions, the issues on the formation of the coalition party and the plan to distribute the money to political parties were raised, with some stakeholders demanding that the elements be amended. Those seeking reforms in these areas are the Council of Governors and the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. The move could jeopardize the plan to form a coalition party as championed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga through the Azimio La Umoja movement. However, court wants the Senate to pass the bill as is. The Senate is expected to convene a special session on the 25th of this month to discuss the bill, which has already been passed by the National Assembly. According to the law, if the Senate approves it the way it is, then it will be submitted to President Uhuru Kenyatta to be signed into law. But if it's amended, then it will be returned to the National Assembly, where it will be debated again. Now, insecurity being witnessed in Kerio Valley may affect voter registration in the area. According to Elgeyo Marakwet election manager John Cox, the turnout is still low, with IEBC acknowledging the challenge of registering voters in insecure areas. However, security officials are expected to be involved so that the targeted individuals are registered as voters ahead of the August 9th general elections. This comes as 1,092 people were by yesterday registered in the entire county after 5 days of registration. Now, the Non-Governmental Organizations Council of Kenya convened a women caucus to discuss the role of women in peace and nation building as the country prepares for the August 2022 general election. Women from across the country were called upon to be at the forefront in championing for peace among communities, create awareness in the second phase of the voter registration drive, and ultimately seek leadership positions in the upcoming election. Speaking during the meeting held at the council's head office at Nyayo House, Nairobi, the chairman Stephen Cheboy sensitized women on major role to play in this electioneering period, including peace building, participating in active politics, and awareness creation. Finally, the Institute for Curriculum Development has released a revised curriculum framework, namely curriculum design, which has been amended following complaints from various stakeholders, especially parents. Many of the exercises that students should have done with the help of their parents or guardians at home have been reduced and will instead be done at school in various ways, such as online research. The writers who had begun the work are obliged to consider the latest revisions. These amendments will now ease the burden on parents and guardians who are complaining about the exercises they claimed were expected to help their children when they were given extra work. In addition, there were complaints that students whose parents or guardians did not have an understanding of education issues could be left behind academically. The chairman of the Publishers Union, Lawrence Njagi, said the books that will be published and approved for use in schools to help achieve the CBC curriculum and will focus on exercises that can be done at school and not at home. The Mombasa DCI continued to interrogate a man of cloth claiming to be a prophet with the capability of helping the worshippers solve their problems, but after giving them their earned money. Laban Mwangi of Jesus Winners Ministry Church in Likoni is accused of deceiving especially women that he has power to cure everything from being barren, broken marriages, unemployment, and even solving high blood pressure. Mwangi was arrested following complaints from more than 7 women who reported at Likoni and Inuka police stations. The women claim to have lost their money to the prophet, yet their problems still remain. And Africa's Centers for Disease Control has recommended routine testing for COVID-19 during the face-to-face meeting of the Africa Heads of State Summit slated for Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Speaking during this week's API Director, Dr. John Kengason, said that the delegates will have to be vaccinated and will be required to wear N95 face masks in order to diminish any possibility of COVID-19 transmission, adding that Africa CDC continues to provide advisories based on science. Dr. Kengason noted that while COVID-19 has taken a longer time than the Spanish flu of 1918 due to the many variants that have prolonged the existence of the pandemic, adding that the advancement in medicine and research has seen efforts aimed at minimizing deaths from COVID-19. And Arsenal's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang says he is completely healthy after having medical checks on his heart. The Gabon international was ruled out of the Africa Cup of Nations after scans revealed heart lesions following a bout of COVID. Writing on Instagram, he said he is completely healthy, really appreciate all the messages over the last few days, and is already back at it. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseta.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
Okay, so there's traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, and it's all the way from Sabaki out towards the SGR. That's quite hot and heavy today, and the rain is coming down, so it's going to slow things down considerably. Let's look at that whole Lunga, Likoni, Lusaka Road, all those connecting with Jogoo Road, that whole square. There's some traffic this morning. It's not too bad beyond that, though. Langata Road, absolute mess. Ngong Road moving very slowly, and we're looking at different parts of Westlands, Kileshra out towards State House. That slows down as well. Limuru Road, not too bad today, but we have traffic all the way from the Village Market out towards Wangari Maathai Way, so that slows down a tad as well. looking better coming off the thicker superhighway. And for once this whole week, Kiambu Road is not too bad, but we'll keep an eye on things, shall we? North Airport Road, not too bad. Juja Road, on the other hand, different story. We're still in traffic hour. Let's see what it looks like in about half hour or so. But not too bad a Friday. The roads are slippery, however, so we want you to be careful. Talk to us on SpiceFM. KE on Twitter, text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
21st day, January 2022. Welcome to the fourth and final hour of The Situation Room today and the final hour of The Situation Room this week. Let's dig the hole with C.T. Muga.
Shimo la ulimi mkono haufutiki.
But those people just mixed tenses and all. And
well, it's a proverb.
And Ngelis.
No. My friend, the whole purpose of this thing is precisely that. If it didn't raise questions and didn't get you to ask, why didn't it wouldn't really be. It falls in that category of proverbs that test your mind just a wee bit. There are those that are simple and straightforward and easy to understand. Some are easy to understand, but the structure, brings about debate.
Shimo la ulimi, mkono haufutiki. Another attempt at an example, Wanjiru?
Hey, I keep getting... I want to complain. Yes, the situations and the circumstances under which I am supposed to generate case studies are not conducive. I do not have an enabling environment. Why? We have been engaged in a very intense debate. I did not have time to think about proverbs.
No. But the precedent upon which you set this was a very peaceful and calm atmosphere.
Yes.
So all things taken into consideration...
which has since been disrupted. And I'm not even on the hot seat. So I'm saying this is not a conducive environment.
So in other words, you're going to break your promise, whereby you had said that I'm going to build X number of schools. You said at least I have built some. Yes. That's what you're saying now.
At least I gave one example that was rejected.
It wasn't rejected.
But you tried. That's what you're saying. So now the promise is not broken. It has been partially fulfilled.
I'll tell you a story, Wanjiru.
Tell me the story. I have a feeling it won't be good for me. But
there's a lady I know who has talked about a government. The failure of this government to manage the civil service cannot be an excuse. Apply accordingly.
For bringing in 10 marks.
We're giving you background.
Yes.
So not just fill in the blanks.
Right. I'm trying to give an example that doesn't relate to government, to governance. Let me put a family setting. If in a family setting, I dig myself in a hole by, let's say, constantly bad-mouthing my spouse in front of my children. When it comes to try to discipline those children, they will turn against me. Why? Because my mouth has been going
ahead of you.
Yes, going ahead of me. So
well done.
Hot seat Nikali.
Not digging yourself out of a hole.
I have money.
The big four agenda you've delivered.
Whether you've seen it or not.
I am ready to end my day.
There's a constant, Erica, that I hear very often, and it's mostly from members of the civil society, and it's essentially about the failure, not of the government, but of the president. And the question I want to ask is, this yardstick on which they base the failure, what is it? The things that you say he hasn't done, okay, what's the yardstick? Because yardstick means Others have done it, others haven't. And so this is what is required.
That's a very good question. And I think the first failure is around the issue of rule of law, contempt of court, violation of the Constitution. When you have the president, and in this case also the deputy president, because you're saying it's Uhuru and William Ruto as the Jubilee administration, and they continually, consistently, systematically undermine the rule of law. They have failed. So that is the first failure. The next failure, as we were talking about earlier, is linked to that, which is economic failure. Because apart from rule of law, they have possibly been part of and have allowed vested interests in our economic system to run amok. And despite the good initiatives that they have, we are seeing that they have taken us back. There's been a lot of regression with regard to our economic situation. Lastly is, in terms of democracy and human rights, we have lost ground. And this is very concerning because we have a global trend towards curbing democratic rights and freedoms. So I think the question is, are we going to embrace Kenya as a democratic constitution and work in that direction? Or are we going to suffer under leaders who are authoritarian and autocratic and have allowed corruption and benefited, possibly, if you look at the Auditor General reports, indicate interests?
You see, why I asked the question
public office
was because whenever I hear that argument, it's devoid of one key factor, that we keep referring to past presidents. And the only fundamental difference is that no president had to deal with implementing the Constitution. None of them, except this one.
Past presidents.
Who had...
But I said Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, not past.
No, I am not querying. I am making a statement, an independent statement about it. We have a new Constitution, and it has been incumbent on this president to see its implementation. And my argument has been this: yes, to comply. Is that what we've been seeing are the details of what happens when you're trying to implement. The arguments that we have about someone not complying with the Constitution or not doing what they're supposed to do, yes, that is a carryover from what we previously had. And remember, you're talking about a president.
Why have you made that assumption?
I'm not making an assumption, because all other presidents that we've had, at one point or the other, will do exactly what they wanted.
Please let us be evidence-based.
All other presidents were amending the Constitution.
Let us support our points with fact. The fact here...
And what have I said which is not factual?
These all other presidents...
Yes, all our presidents...
supported. And why have you gone from all? You asked a question. Why the civil society continually... criticize.
No, that's not what I asked.
What was the question you asked?
I didn't ask.
Let's go back to that.
I made a statement. I said, what is the yardstick that you use for judging it? So I went to the Constitution. And I said...
Simple. And you don't want to hear the answer. We said the Constitution.
This new Constitution.
That's what I'm referring to.
Hold on. We do not have another Constitution. When you say the Constitution, we are talking about the supreme law.
Right.
So
which is a new one.
No, if you consider 10 years is not new in Constitution terms. Within 10 years, our Constitution actually is ready to be changed because it's a living document. So it's not new. It is our supreme law.
That's the theory, my dear.
It is our supreme law. So when I don't need to qualify new, old, I just say the Constitution. You should understand me.
CT was then saying that this Constitution that we are talking about
is the yardstick.
Yes, but it was new by the time an administration came in.
It doesn't matter.
It does.
What are you saying?
Because it has changed structures, it has changed ways of thinking, it has changed many things.
It's still a yardstick.
So the yardstick basically is, you're talking about somebody who grew up knowing that grade A is 80. And then suddenly you've said grade A is 99. And they're sitting that exam
and you think
that day. It's confusing. It's okay, so how do I get there?
Yeah,
right? That's where the change comes.
If
And that's
you're
where
grading
CT is saying,
governance.
and that's where CT is saying, so this is here you are coming in to implement this new constitution that nobody really knows exactly the exact details of this constitution. Nobody knows the nitty-gritty of implementing and living the constitution, but the burden has been placed on you.
I really like what you're saying.
And there's that context.
I
of,
like what you're
now
saying.
you're carrying that burden of, I actually don't know this document as well.
I
and
like
I'm
what you're saying
expected to.
because you're saying the nitty-gritty. The criticism of the president and of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto in the implementation of the constitution is not the nitty-gritty. It's the principle. The constitution came to further our democratic agenda, which started with the agitation in the 1980s. So I put it to you that the 2010 constitution is not new as such. It is Kenyans saying, hold on, we gained independence, but we forgot to reform the colonial, extractive, imperial institutions. So the discomfiture of this of Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, with this constitution is that they do not embrace the need to transform in these institutions. Instead, and there's a word that Danish Odongo, when he was saying, he looked at this, what was happening in Nairobi County and said, as a country, we are suffering from cognitive dissonance, which is the point you're saying. Whereas what we know and what we are supposed to do and what is good for us are different. Now, when that is happening with our leaders, they will then subvert the law because they want to continue benefiting under the present regime, and the Constitution seeks to undermine their ability to
but that's where
usurp
that's
public
where context
processes.
comes in again, Wanjiru, because
So if you take a bigger picture, what I'm saying, it's not the details, it's the principle of democratizing institutions.
I'm actually going
as
back to the
opposed
details.
Re-centralizing
It
them.
is highly likely that, in principle, this administration, the president, has actually wanted and very much wants to implement this constitution exactly the way it is. The nitty-gritty comes in. You have sat in your household, and the stakeholders in the household, who are the majority minus you plus your spouse, plus your children, plus your visitors, plus your domestic workers, have basically reorganized how things are. Now, the master bedroom shall be in the living room. The guest room shall be what was formerly called the master bedroom. The breakfast shall be taken at 9 p.m. Lunch shall be had at 6 a.m. All those things. You've changed things. You're basically changed. Now, who is the implementer of this? The leader of the household. You are also just trying to leave this new reality. In principle, you're like, yeah. I mean, you saw the sense. I mean, you were like, yeah, but there are some things you didn't agree with, but you said, okay, let's go. You are used to getting into the house and going to a master bedroom, and you're told, no, you now sleep here in the living room. As you're leaving that, your other people, those other stakeholders are saying, this one is failing. This one does not want to implement this new
First of all,
rules in the
Eric,
Constitution.
please use an
Nitty-gritty.
appropriate example, one that does not imply that the Constitution creates chaos. One. Number two.
Actually, it does.
Number two.
It
number
does.
two.
It does.
Number two.
It was
what you're talking about.
We called this the 2010 Constitution disruptive.
It is not
We called
2010
it-
Constitution. It is the Constitution.
We
don't have another Constitution.
Yes,
it's like
we
saying
don't.
every time I
the
speak
reason
to
I'm
you, I have to call you
Okay,
Eric
the
Latiff,
Constitution that was
the blah, blah, as
promulgated
though
in
there is another one.
The reason I'm using that is because we came from another constitution that we repealed. We
Yeah, so why are
called
you hung
this
up on that?
disruptive. It was disrupting the order that had been created by the previous constitution. It disrupted things. It came up with a Bill of Rights. It came up with a new way of government. It came up with the way in
Came
which
up
said
with Chapter
it was
6.
very clear that
Actually, not disrupting.
It came up with
transforming.
disruptively. It came up with a very clear way of saying the citizen is the supreme, and it said it there that everything shall be in consultation and concurrence with the citizen. That is a big thing.
Of course, it's a transformation.
So
it's a revolution. Call
probably-
it what it is. It's a bloodless coup.
Probably
It's a revolution.
Cut the leader some slack and see. Maybe they actually in that there also when Uhuru was saying, "Hey, this thing is an implementable one," it's because he's used to
cut and dry.
This is what he's used to.
You know,
and he's the one who is in charge of implementing it. He's the one who's in charge of knowing, okay, so we have 47 governors and I need to relate with them. We have judiciary and rule of law, and this is how things are happening. We have an executive, that this is how the executive relates with the National Assembly. I am not playing political games of carrot and stick with MPs in the National Assembly by giving them appointments as minister and assistant minister to get my way. I have to do a thing.
And then you have all these independent institutions.
Yes.
Right, it could be uncomfortable because being a student of the authoritarian kleptocratic Moi regime, his template and his and William Ruto's template is one of authoritarianism and kleptocracy, which has now become a criminal enterprise. Yes, so it could be disruptive.
Adjectives
but
notwithstanding,
I
can hear what you're saying.
Adjectives notwithstanding, what I'm saying is forget the detail. Let's look at the principle.
We're saying the same thing here. That it was you were saying the same thing.
Yes,
and even if
his
you
model.
don't want to accept it,
But I hadn't finished my point.
That it is uncomfortable. It was a difficult situation. Whether the adjectives that you're using to describe the situation are different from the ones that Eric's talking about here.
So
but
we are saying the same thing.
It was difficult. You're
but
coming from a place of something that you're not used to. And then here you are having to implement something where there are 1,000 other players. That everything you will say, there will be somebody who will come and refute it.
In fact, you put in the word players. What I will ask you to do, and why I'm saying it's not about the details, it's about the interests. And until, as Kenyans, we identify the need to safeguard our interests and ensure that the leaders we put in check safeguard our interests, they will continue to use our state resources for their limited interests. And that's what we were discussing between 7 and 8, saying that we have expanded the budget by almost 6 trillion. And a lot of that has been driven by private interests. And that's why we have the present constitutional dispensation.
Yes.
So,
not new.
Not new.
Yes.
So my issue is it in their interests to overthrow the self-interest? And I put it to you, no.
Nobody will rise to power and then overthrow the interests that they have, that power gives them.
Exactly.
Today, if we elected Wanjiru, this Wanjiru who talks here.
This one.
We took her to State House.
I don't agree.
First of all,
I don't agree.
You will not see her.
I do not agree.
She will not answer her call.
In her books, she will not have changed one bit.
Yes.
But here we'll be talking about Wanjiru.
God,
I'll be captured by the deep state.
Yes.
Hamtaniona.
You know what
motorcade of 20 cars.
Wanjiru, you'll be going back home and you'll be very honest and sincere and saying, I'm doing the best I can.
Today
I have not
this,
changed. This is why I sought to lead, and this is why I'm still living within those principles. Yes, there are several things here that leadership now calls for a balancing here. It's about giving one foot so that you can gain an inch here. That 1 foot is what we'll be discussing on this show.
But
Wanjiru is giving a foot.
No, but if what you're saying is the case, then what you're saying is that Kenya cannot be saved, that all our leaders...
No.
You know, if you look at the economic...
That's not what we're saying, Wanjiru.
But that's what you're saying.
No.
You see, for
that's
us...
your interpretation of what we're saying.
So what are you saying? Because we are saying we have a constitutional dispensation that seeks to
Wanjiru,
overthrow
our discussions,
private interest in public governance.
Yes. They are...
And we have an administration that has totally refused to deal with that agenda. Yes. And in fact has become part and parcel of the problem. Hence the term criminal enterprise. You may take
we have
it or
an
not.
administration that has gone in to find that system.
Well,
maybe
not to find all of them. Some of them may be beneficiaries.
Yes, to find a system that
historical beneficiaries. Hence, these are
you're going to find a system that's been established for so long, and that's how it works. So you come
or
in
that
as,
you have been a beneficiary of.
Yes, so you come in as a political leader, and you're saying, okay, so how many things can we transform? There are some 2 things or 3 things that you don't want to transform immediately, but there are 7 things that you want to transform immediately.
Yeah.
Those 7 things hold you to ransom because they're telling you, but those 2. But we know you have those 2 that you also want to transform
and on
later.
that I agree with you.
So you are caught.
Agree with
you are caught in that system. Now the thing is, can we say that Kenya is unsalvageable? No, we cannot say that, because all these other stakeholders in the republic called Kenya, including the primary stakeholder, the citizen, are still alive.
Actually,
And the conversations that we keep having. You see, like now, going to court on the issues that you've taken to court, several issues, starting with CDF, into this ones, all these issues that you take to court, that is the role that you're playing, an active citizen, holding the administration, the system, accountable, and seeking it to move and forcing it to move, making it uncomfortable, because that's a whole thing. That's a whole disruption. The disruption did not end with Mwai Kibaki holding that thing at Uhuru Park like this for all of us to see there's a new constitution.
Actually,
the
I
disruption
agree with you.
Just began.
I agree with you in that I think they tried, or at least I think President Uhuru Kenyatta tried. He wanted to leave a legacy. Unfortunately, he was beholden to political favors and historical obligations, you may call them that, to retain certain status quo. And so in his ideal world, he would have managed to reform the state just enough without disrupting his interests.
And
unfortunately, that has shown...
Can I ask you something?
He was unable to do that.
Okay.
And one last point that Abraham Rugo brought out, he talked about this issue of leadership. And I think as Kenyans, we need to recognize that the resolution or the completion of our revolution is about leadership. I believe what Kebudha Kibwana has done in Makueni is about leadership. I think there are also other governors who, some may be very cantankerous, but have managed to do, to exemplify pretty good leadership.
There are very few.
And there are very few. But even we as citizens are also very few who are exemplifying leadership.
Yep.
And we must also not forget the private sector, who are also actors in this. So
why don't we throw in the religious sector while we're at it?
Agreed. So actually our failure is one of leadership, and this is why our constitutional revolution, our democratic process has stalled and at risk of reversal.
It hasn't
I want
stalled
to ask
at all,
you something,
actually.
Wanjiru. Do you have some time or you want to go to a break, Eric?
Let's take a break.
Okay, I have a question.
You have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Should I ask the question?
No,
or you want to
ask
go
after the break.
Yes, you take a break.
It's for
first.
Wanjiru.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Bro, na si watu wamejenga manyumba hii area. Kwanza angalia ile. Are you seeing that roof? That color? Sio ni nyumba mpya?
That's not a new house, bro. That's a Covermax roof.
Covermax?
Covermax. It's more than just a roof. It's color that lasts. Ukiweka, umeweka.
So whose new house is that anyway? Really nice.
Niangu.
How's that possible?
Good choice from me. Covermax didn't let me down. It's good to have a long-lasting roof when you have a family, you know? Covermax roofing sheets with advanced color coating technology. A quality product from Mabati Rolling Mills.
Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for it.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. You know, we are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
City, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, say, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Has you ever that kind of... Has anybody been
Listen, I will not listen.
a bit of advice? Because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs. It's a very suspect notion.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Cloudy, foggy morning in Nairobi, 19 degrees, highs of 25 and lows of 15 today. 18 degrees and sunny in Nakuru in some parts, highs of 24 and lows of 13. It's mostly cloudy at 18 in Nyeri, highs of 25 and lows of 12. While in Eldoret, it's mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 12. We're looking at cloudy conditions in Mombasa for most of today, highs of 32 and lows of 25. And in Malindi, cloudy conditions as well at 29, highs of 31 and lows of 27. Kisumu was mostly cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 18. And Kakamega today, cloudy conditions through today, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Kampala, sunny at 21 now, 28 will be the high, 31 the high in a mostly sunny Dar es Salaam, and we'll see lows of 25. It's cloudy in Johannesburg at 19, highs of 26 and lows of 12. There's a fog over the city of Lagos, continues for most of today as the Harmattan winds continue, highs of 33. And lows of 21. It's raining in Kinshasa, 23, highs of 32 and lows of 23. All right, in Paris, 3 degrees and cloudy, highs of 6 and lows of 0. And we're looking at 1 degree, cloudy in London, highs of 7 and lows of 1. Not to forget Beijing, where it's -3 going into early Friday evening. -1 will be the high and lows of -4. Let's round things out in the Big Apple. New York, -6 and clear coming into early Friday. We'll see highs of -5 and lows of -11. Chatter.
Chilled Spice.
Okay, still traffic hour. Most parts of the city, it doesn't look like it's letting up, at least not for now. Still that situation that we see Weybridge to SGR Mombasa Road. Uhuru Highway now piling up as you're getting into the city all the way through to Westlands in and outbound. Looking a little bit better on the Thika Superhighway, so traffic has dissipated. We're just looking at that stretch just before the Pangani underpass out towards Murang'a Road and Kipande, and then through to the Globe Cinema overpass. So that continues for a short while, but it looks like traffic has been kept to a dull roar. Well in. SpiceFM KE on Twitter through the morning. Text 40127.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, the conversation continues 26 minutes to 10. Ndu, your question
So,
now.
Wanjiru, taking all these things, I'm looking at we talk about the president wanting to leave a legacy and certain things happening. We look at there being a leadership issue whereby so many things have not been done. Take a look back 10 years ago. Okay, no. Yeah, 9 years ago, right? With all things being presented in the manner in which they were, with the demands of the Constitution to be delivered to Kenyans and Kenya, as it were, do you think he was the right man for the job?
Let me not answer that and try. I think the proper response.
You want to ask your own question?
No. The proper response is let us judge the performance of the president by the evidence. And the first evidence we need to look at is rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
And already we've pronounced ourselves on that, whether it's the economic, whether it's, compliance to constitution, court rulings and all of that. And then look at the actual delivery, because that's the only measure that's a fair measure.
Okay.
Whether
so
or not
has he delivered?
So let's look at the rule of law.
So let's look at the rule
The
of law.
percentage
Has there been a delivery
of the court orders that have been directly at the president, or officers who are directly answerable to the president, that have not been heeded. What's that percentage versus those that have been heeded?
Can I answer with just going back to the conversation we're having between 8 and 9 o'clock? Because we seem to be creating a dichotomy, and it's a false dichotomy, that we either have authoritarian rule. No, that authoritarian rule is necessary for development, that we have to choose between democracy and development. Hence this issue of militarization. Hence this issue of circumventing the law. The number of cases in court, the number of government pieces of legislation that have had to be stopped by the court are numerous. There's a case right now where 23 pieces of legislation, many of them are fronted by the government itself, are subject of the court. So what I'm saying is this.
That does not necessarily mean, Wanjiru, that the government is actually breaking the law.
What I'm saying is this.
The government has gone through the whole process.
What I'm saying is this.
Publish bill, take it to the National Assembly, canvass for
the
its
point I'm making is this.
It's in the courts because there is a rule of law in the country.
It's not the only one. And what is the cost of having litigation, not just one, but numerous pieces of litigation? Other aspects of the Constitution not implemented. It shows that this administration, and I'll say it's the administration because it's the President and William Ruto, were not aligned to the principles of the Constitution. The devil details would be there, but not aligned to the principles, and that is why you have had slowdown, delay, undermining. In terms of democratic rights, in terms of the implementation of devolution, in terms of rule of law, in terms of economic management. I think in economic management there have been interests and there's also been wrong policy choices. So was he the right person? I would say, is this, the Jubilee administration, the right person to complete the democratic process of Kenya? We've seen obviously not. Their actions have shown us no, they are not aligned to the principles of the Constitution in the way they execute their mandate.
Has your question been answered, Ndu?
Well, in part.
In part.
So. Yes.
I think I just want to go back to the point that CT was raising there, and that's contextualizing everything. So yes, this administration, with everything that it came and found, has failed to deliver on some things, has flopped in its interpretation of the Constitution, because it's a matter of interpretation. How did it understand the law, and how do the citizens understand the law? And that's why we go back to court, Supreme Court, interpret this, interpret the other, and the delivery of various things. I would say that even if it comes to the rule of law, the fact that matters actually go to courts, the fact that matters go to the end where a competent court delivers its verdict, the fact that the same administration against whom a verdict has been delivered goes to appeal in the same courts, shows that it understands.
Understands?
That there is rule of law. There is need to go with the rule of law. Shows there is some basic understanding.
And
shows
there's
that
no stifling of the system.
There's some basic willingness to follow that.
But you're missing the point.
The disruptive bit and everything else, all those interests at play, all those things of trying to come and remove an archaic system that has been there, that took advantage of our systems from independence, that has its roots deep in the system. Because we've got to realize that we put in some political leaders to come and disrupt a machinery called government that is used to doing things a certain way.
We're not trying to actually...
And even when the president is coming in, and that's why the issue of the president and the military comes in, even when the president is coming in and trying to bring in now external people into the civil service, it's because this system just sat back and pushed and looked at him. So what do you want? You think that there's an issue with procurement? You want to send us home?
No.
Okay, you send us home.
One, I won't give you that one.
You want to do this and the other?
I won't give you that one.
The structure that we have called government has pushed back on our political leaders.
I will not give you that one, because in terms of the appointments to public office and institutions that would have helped the furtherance of service delivery and rule of law, because rule of law governs not just the top institutions, but also the implementing institutions, those appointments were so mishandled. Instead of appointing independent, competent people, the president has consistently appointed people who he can manage. And in so doing...
Tell me one leader who does not appoint people who can manage. One.
Start
with Putin, go to Biden.
Let me finish the point I'm making. What this president has done, and I'll say, actually this president, is weaken the independence of institutions through poor appointments. So if you have poor appointments based on patronage, horse trading and
for
whatever.
example.
Then what happens is you don't have implementation.
Is there any other way in which appointments are made, really?
Yes, there is.
In the political
based
sphere?
For example,
on,
Wanjiru.
based on competence.
For example.
Based on competence. I'll give an example of the EACC appointments.
Right. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption
Ethics
Commission.
and Anti-Corruption Commission. And
Right.
you saw how there was an appointment, there was a conflict of interest, this person had benefited from public procurement, had done audits for the First Family. And if you look at, I would say that...
Who made the appointment? What was the process of
Be
getting...
very clear that
we are talking about the
vetting
commissioners.
processes in Parliament...
We're talking about commissioners to the EACC.
We're talking about the chair.
And even the chair
Right.
and the commissioners.
And what we are saying, if you look at the appointment, the vetting process by Parliament, by a government that has a tyranny of numbers, a government that has been able to rally...
There's a step before
Hold on,
Parliament,
hold
Wanjiru.
on.
There's
the constitution
a
of the board.
selection panel.
Yes, even the
that selection panel is law, is legal.
Okay, hold on.
The selection panel includes people who are not picked by the president.
No, the names have
the selection
to be...
panel. The selection
How are the
panel.
names recommended?
The selection panel.
How are the names recommended?
Law. It
No,
says you
the
shall
names.
have Law Society of Kenya. The Law Society of Kenya sends
Must
its
have a
person.
representative?
It is not the president. The Law Society of Kenya sends its person to the selection panel. The religious organizations send their person to the selection panel, and so on and so forth. The president only picks out one or two people.
Unless you're saying the
The
president
selection
influences
panel
all
does
this.
not
No.
influence the Law Society
The point
of
I'm
Kenya.
making, the point I'm making is this: look at the appointments to the JSC, critical institutions.
Yes.
Appointments to the EACC, and actually,
Again.
hold on.
Again.
Appointments to the Auditor General.
Again.
Let me tell you.
They are
let me
not
finish.
the president's
let me
sole discretion
let-
to appoint all those places
Great.
that you're saying.
Let me finish.
There are other players.
Can you allow me to finish the point I'm making? The strength of institutions is based on their independence. Independence in terms of funding, in terms of appointments. Chapter 15 institutions were created as a check on, another point of accountability on the executive, on the judiciary, on even the counties. Delays to appoint Auditor General, delays to appoint, let's say, the IBC, 4 years, not properly constituted. Dodgy appointments and vetting processes, let's say, to the EACC. Look at the JSC and the kind of, behind the scenes that goes on, and the final people who land in offices. So if you look at, the point I'm making to you,
But you see what
the point I'm making is one difference, and one difference between President Uhuru and President Kibaki that served President Kibaki is President Kibaki worked with his political detractors. What was his first action when he was fighting against corruption? Who did he call? He called his fiercest critic, one of the fiercest critics, not his fiercest, one of the fiercest critics, John Githongo, to head up, because he wasn't afraid of opposition and contrary voice. The problem with the president and this administration, in fact, is that they only work with people who tell them what they want to hear. And this, therefore, undermines the independence of institutions, and they do not benefit from real and genuine feedback.
I think that's an unfair assessment. I'll just go back to commenting on all
Tell
this.
me why it's unfair. And because there's a question you asked. You are talking about, is it the president's failure if the public service doesn't work? And I say yes. It is the responsibility of the head of state. This is a part of the social contract to make government systems work. You can't pay an entire public service, weaken it, and then say it's not working. And we know there's a historical problem, but it is one.
There we go. There's a historical problem, which is where I'm coming from.
And
there's a historical problem.
If you allow me the last point.
That's the last point.
There was a public service transformation office that was set up to deal with this historical problem, and it had started bearing fruit. This administration didn't dismantle, but it watered it down. Why? Instead of working with those independent, professional autocrats who do not take orders from above, they parachuted in their own people and weakened that institution. That's why you have seen actually a reversal in terms of the indicators. some of the departments that were functioning well, even with Huduma, their service levels have gone down. So I put it to you that the Jubilee administration has been singularly unable to run the civil service, and that, coupled with private interests, has been their undoing, and that's why they have failed as an administration. Some good ideas, some good initiatives, despite their inefficiencies.
Now, so we come in. The constitution that we gave ourselves in 2010 looked at all these things. It understood that there's politics that comes to interfere with the running of government. And then there is lack of accountability. And that's why it put in all these processes, and law, acts of parliament have brought those processes to life. That you shall not appoint people just like that. You shall not appoint just an auditor general just by sitting down and thinking, why should I do hesabu? Auditor general. There shall be a process of appointing an auditor general. And that process will not be determined by the executive. It shall be determined by a certain process that is set up in law.
In appointment.
There's a recruitment process that shall not be touched by the executive.
Right.
And even if the executive is playing a role in it, there are others in that process.
Great. So they do have
So
a role.
all those are there. So by the time the name is being brought to the president, there are all those people who, it's a multi-sectoral selection panel, has actually gone through vetting, brings to the president. President takes it to parliament. Hardly have we seen any recommendation of a selection panel being rejected by the president, apart from the JSC on the judges.
JSC.
The others.
EACC.
The president rejected?
No, not rejected, but in terms of the names that eventually got put forward, they didn't follow the selection panel.
Okay.
So you have to look at the processes.
Does the law allow the president to do that? In that case, it does. So as they go to parliament...
No, that you can't say...
It wasn't an illegality.
No, you can't say... You see, at the end of the day...
The selection panel shall
gives recommendation
send
and rank.
3 names
and
to the
rank.
president and rank. The reason why they're saying send 3 names is now giving the president discretion of these 3
of choice.
Who shall you take to parliament. If that wasn't the case, it shall be.
So what's the point you're making?
My point is that this president is not necessarily the one who has brought in all these problems.
I'm not saying...
We have structures in place, and those structures are the ones that are working. The thing, my argument has been that we are trying to deal with a system that does not want to change.
It has a life of its own, actually.
Has a life of its own. Whichever person you bring as a political leader of this, they have got to go and negotiate with this system on how it's going to turn.
Yeah, but
and it will not stop and turn immediately. You have got to find ways of making it work. And make it work in such a way that you satisfy the people who put you in office and they can see there's some development, there's some movement, and you also make this system feel comfortable enough to turn.
I agree with you on that. But the point I'm making in the president's leadership style is that he's not comfortable with independent institutions that challenge his authority.
Hold it right there.
And I'll give you an example.
But
the judiciary. The judiciary. And you might say, well, the president, he made public statements against the judiciary. He also, there was the issue with the appointments to the JSC.
But what I'm saying, when you have... A blanket statement like that should...
Yeah, no, it's not a blanket statement because the president did make statements against the judiciary and the ruling administration and its political whatever.
So does that mean he's uncomfortable?
Of course he is. Of course he is. And you know how do you know the president is uncomfortable with the judiciary? Look at the funding. So how do you expect to execute rule of law if you defund the institutions that are going to enforce rule of law? Look at the Auditor General, the former Auditor General.
The list can go on.
Yes.
But for every argument you have, believe me, there's a counter argument for it.
But
that really isn't...
You asked me for
no,
why.
No, we actually didn't. You came in to counter what Eric was saying.
No, Eric asked me why I think that why I contend that the president has not performed. And you made your argument why he has. And I said it's because he's weakened institutions.
You see, that you've explained at great length and even given examples that you think would support it. The basic argument that we started off with was this. You have a president who has found himself in this very, very interesting situation where he has been brought up in a certain system and he now has a new system that he has to operationalize. It is him as the president. And we're saying, when you look at what is going on, even the fact that we can have this discussion the way we do and say the things we say even about the president, that is progress. When we talk about the independent institutions and the fights that go on and the vibrancy of the civil society, that is progress. Now, this progress is not made in a vacuum. It's made with you trying to wrestle with systems that have been there, thought processes that have been there, historical ways of doing things that have been there. That is because all these changes that we talk about and we want, they're made incrementally. And that's what we are seeing. And even this judiciary that we keep, there are those who tell us the judiciary is a lame duck. And when I look at what the judiciary has to deal with, the reality now, the lived experience, the cases that each judge has to deal with.
The things we're told here on a weekly basis about struggles that they have to contend with.
I've never said the judiciary is a lame duck.
No,
I don't
it's
think
not
they
you.
are.
It's not you. If it was you, I would have just said you.
I
said others who have said.
Maybe who don't know better.
The lived experience that we see is a vibrant judiciary that is going beyond what you actually thought they could do and trying to find, with the limited resources that they have, trying to find a way forward. What are we saying? Progress is being made.
Yes.
I
in various contexts. I want to add on to that.
And I think I'll agree progress is being made despite the resistance and failures
I want to put in a different
of the administration.
I want to put it in a different context. If we actually were to say that Uhuru Kenyatta is against implementation of the Constitution, is against furtherance of the rule of law, I would even turn it around and say Wanjiru, the voter, the Kenyan citizen, this one who owns the Constitution, this one who owns the country, is the greatest impediment to the implementation of that same Constitution.
And then
this Wanjiru is not willing to meet the gender threshold. This Wanjiru is passing on a blame onto other people and saying, bring me women candidates. This Wanjiru is not electing more women into parliament, into positions of leadership. This Wanjiru is not implementing Chapter 6 of the Constitution by saying, I know you are a thief, I am not going to vote for you.
I will then put it to you.
This Wanjiru...
Your argument is the perfect epitomization of the imperialist, supremacist, oppressive perspective that the Constitution seeks to undo. Wanjiru's behavior, in a way, is conditioned by the circumstances in which Wanjiru finds herself.
Thank you.
Therefore, leadership, which is why I said it's about leadership. And that is why I'm saying, you asked what's the standard for leadership, because what we are measuring is leadership.
Yes.
And that's why I was saying I measure the failure of the current leadership because they did not embrace, by their actions, they did not embrace the transformation agenda.
So are
they
people
were too stuck.
into even a way of thinking?
It's
are
the
people
context,
corralled
Wanjiru.
into a way of decision making?
You're socialized and you're in a construct.
So are you saying
This
that
you're in a construct?
you
This
cannot make a
Wanjiru has
decision and
refused
break
to
out
play
of the
her
maze?
role.
You're in a construct.
This Wanjiru has
I
refused to
live
take
in a
up
make a
her role.
decision
I
seeing
live-
the situation in which you are in. Are you saying that leadership, bad or good, so much so controls you and conditions you until you're unable to think and make decisions for yourself?
No, but then you're saying that.
No, I'm asking. I'm not saying.
Yeah, but
based
that's
on what
that's
you just said.
What I'm saying, when you try and blame the citizen,
I'm
go
not
back.
blaming the citizen.
Well, that's a point you made.
I'm not
I
blaming
said
the citizen. I'm just saying the citizen
plays a part.
plays a part.
Of course, we all play a part. We're in a society.
Yes.
But I go back to the point, leadership. And the point I was making is we need to ensure we elect leaders who embrace the principles of the transformation and the revolution of the Constitution.
Yes.
Uhuru Kenyatta
Two,
and
hold
William
them
Ruto
accountable.
are beneficiaries of the imperialist, supremacist, oppressive system. They are not going to overturn it. That is actually the point I'm making.
The Kenyan that was voting in 2013, the Kenyan that was voting in 2017, right, is a child of, just call them again,
imperialist, supremacist, oppressive.
Yes.
System.
Was brought up
Agreed.
in that.
And I agree with you.
Is a child of that.
I agree
was
with you.
educated in that.
On that, I agree.
So that's why I'm saying in context.
And in that same basket is where we get our leaders.
Yes.
Just so that you understand.
And the biggest,
but I don't hold them at the same level.
The biggest job the biggest job of this leader is to deliver on what they have been told by the citizen. The biggest job of the citizen is to make sure that the leader delivers.
Those with the most power bear the highest responsibility.
And who has the most power in this Kenya?
The citizen.
The citizen. The Constitution
According to our
says
Constitution.
Number one.
It's very
our
good if
job is to make
very
sure.
good if you put it that way.
Accountability.
Very good if you put it that way.
Accountability.
The citizen did not generate computer results. The citizen did not eliminate Chris Musando. The citizen did not steal the trillions. The citizen did not drive Kenya into a debt crisis. So I put it to you that the government we have does not represent the interest of the citizen. I know we have a problem that we are trying to resolve. We are trying to unearth
so the citizen
we are trying to unearth
that is not
we are trying to unearth the imperialist, supremacist, oppressive state.
Have you missed one adjective there?
Pardon? Yeah, there's one I'm
Throw
leaving.
one more in there.
I want to complicate things.
One more would do the thing.
Yeah. So the citizens are also subject of this. However, the point I am making is that the current crop of leaders are direct beneficiaries, and they have continued to perpetrate their imperialist, supremacist, oppressive agenda under a democratic constitution, which is why they will. They are uncomfortable under it and will do everything they can to undermine it, including trying to overthrow it with the illegal and unconstitutional BBI.
And I told you, Wanjiru, go anywhere in the world, everywhere. Delegate your authority to somebody, to Wanjiru Gikonyo, and then sit back and see what Wanjiru will do with that authority.
They
are going to do exactly all those things.
Don't agree.
Yes,
I agree.
As long as you sit back.
As long as I sit. Oh, okay. Yeah. As long as I sit back.
The reason why you find democratic principles being applied in those countries we like referring to is because their citizens know and they hold these leaders to account.
From the get-go.
I think those countries.
From selection.
Yeah, from the very beginning of the process.
If we look at it, those countries had their moments like this.
Yes.
And they. And blood was spilled, or they had some.
My friend, I'm glad you brought in that example because ours is bloodless.
Imagine.
Really bloodless. And look at the changes and the progress that we are making.
But guess what? I look at Sudan and I look at the civilian movement in Sudan right now. And I ask myself, what is happening in Sudan that they have rejected this military dictatorship despite the difficulties they have?
20 seconds to the end of the show.
How do we spur that in Kenyans to fight for our democracy?
Ever remind us the day's proverb.
Shimo shimo ya ulimi kono hauvutiki.
Shimo ya ulimi, shimo la ulimi. Kono haivutiki. Thank you for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again next week on Monday. Have a lovely weekend. It's 10 a.m.
Spice up your life.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport.